Hello, my fellow Westorians. What a day it is. The day after the final episode. The Monday. I almost called it a Wednesday. See, I don't have no sense of time here. It's Westeros. We don't know what time it is. They play with days and years and minutes. We have no idea what's going on.
And lives and hearts.
and all the things that you shouldn't play with. Well, yep. So
Fire.
Fire, yeah. Dragons, ice, swords, bows.
I'm pretty sure someone was running with scissors.
Someone definitely ran with scissors, if they were invented. If not, they ran with knives. Lots of running with knives and spears, and yeah, it's just really dangerous. No one should do anything that they do on the show at home, except maybe eat and drink, and even that though you got to watch out for. There's all the poisonings and questionable foods.
You really got to be careful what you drink.
What are you drinking, Sean? That is a strange color, even for one of your
creamy.
beverages.
It's the green naked drink, the protein and greens naked drink, mixed with a coconut pineapple sparkling ice.
Okay. Yep.
It's tasty.
There's another one in the books.
No Mountain Dew, for what it's worth. A lot of people out there are worried about my health. Still plenty of sugar.
You went with a different kind of dew. River dew or hill dew, not Mountain Dew this time? Sorry, I'll try to come with better puns than that one. That one wasn't very good.
Mildew.
That was better. So the characters are scattering to many different directions, but the fandom remains. We have many stories to tell going forward, and new stories will come whenever the prequels arrive. And of course, there will be more books. But for now, Jon to the far north, Grey Worm to the far south, Arya to the mysterious west, the Dothraki and Drogon back to the east. I guess Drogon to the east. That's what they said.
Yeah.
They don't know exactly where, but yeah. And we
We
have...
can zigzag.
We can
Learn
zigzag.
from Rickon.
And to complete the fracturing of things, we have a shot of the cracked map of Westeros, which is cracked in a very specific way. As Ashea puts it up on screen, you can see it's cracked right along the border of the north, showing the new division of Westeros, the 6 kingdoms. Now, the problem with 6 kingdoms, it's always been a bit of a misnomer. In the first place, 7 kingdoms wasn't quite accurate, so...
I remember when I was first getting into this, that's one of the things, is like, count up, wait a minute, but then how many?
It's confusing because 2 of the kingdoms were merged into one at the time, and then they were split back into their original parts when Aegon the Conqueror took them, but he didn't exactly rename them kingdoms again because they're all his, but they were administered separately. So the Riverlands, that's when Robert talks about making the 8.
And they didn't really get Dorne at first.
They didn't get Dorne for a long time, 180 years. Dorne has been in the 7 kingdoms longer, for less time than Aegon's conquest had been in place. About 180 years before Dorne joined, and the conquest has been 300 years.
I'm sure we'll talk about it, but that moment when Sansa's like, the North's been its own kingdom for thousands of years, so we're going to go back to this. Like, hey, what about Dorne was also, right?
Yep.
That prince doesn't have any agency yet.
That's right. Well, there's a lot of reasons why someone might not want to just simply declare independence in the middle of a great council, but it is a question worth entertaining, for sure, and that and many other questions we will entertain this episode.
And on the subject of that cracked map that you were talking about, it's worth noting that we see it in the intro, too.
Oh, yeah, not just in the episode, but in the intro.
The crack goes across, yeah.
Yeah, when you see the animated intro part, yeah.
What side of the Iron Islands? What side of the crack were the Iron Islands on? Is that clear?
The crack is only across the north. So it's an east-west crack, so it wouldn't really be able to involve the Iron Islands unless it was a lot lower than the north. But I think it's the Iron Islands in the south. That is also a bit of a conundrum that they presented us with, and possibly, in fact, likely a continuity error, but it's the kind of thing that could have been explained off screen, so it doesn't have to be a continuity error. I believe it is. But anyway, since we're getting into it, let's just cover this right now. The issue is Yara voted for Bran in this episode, but prior to the season, in fact, back in season 6, she had a deal with Daenerys that the Iron Islands would be independent as long as they didn't raid the 7 kingdoms, the rest of the 7 kingdoms.
So does that mean now it's okay for them to raid the 7 kingdoms?
Well,
is that
that's
the
part
implication?
Part of the problem is that deal was made with Dany, who's not the queen, and she wasn't queen at the time. She was claiming to be queen, so that deal isn't necessarily upheld. So it's kind of left up in the air. Yara was certainly upset with Dany's death because they had that deal, and as you know, that was part of the reason she would be allowed to stay independent was because she had the deal with Dany. She doesn't necessarily have that deal with Bran. In fact, the way it's explained there, it sort of looks like she's part of the kingdom again, but it wasn't entirely explicit. Some would argue that, well, because she voted, then she was part of it. Well, Davos sat there saying, I'm not sure I get a vote, but I vote aye. And then you got Brienne and Arya, who also probably don't have
they
votes.
Would have votes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really clear. That whole thing was a little weird. It's part of the effect of rushing things. Like you shouldn't have this. This process was a little quick.
They never even exactly named what this was. They never even said this is a King's Moot or a King's Council. It's like they seem like they're just meeting to talk about Tyrion. Oh, by the way, where's Jon? Like, I assume there must have been some letters written leading up to this to get everyone there, and lots of details to hammer out. Because you can imagine maybe there are factors like they may have already discussed things like who gets to vote in this or not, but maybe they didn't. The fact that Davos wasn't sure.
It doesn't look like the idea of having a King's Moot didn't come up until during the
While they were doing
None
it,
of them knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you got to imagine there are things to answer, like maybe some people get votes but don't get protection. Pay taxes, but don't get to vote, or vice versa, right?
And, I just said you can imagine knew it was coming, but I guess maybe one person knew it was coming.
So a lot of this, I can imagine, would be chapters and chapters of a book that George writes.
Could be a whole book. No, probably not a whole book, but a lot.
This episode could be a whole book, though.
It could be, yeah. If you slowed everything down and take more time for people to need to be convinced that Dany is, dangerous, or if you take more time for her to become dangerous, rather than it just happening so quickly.
The visits that Tyrion would get in prison, and Jon would get in prison over this time.
Convincing people that Bran, rather than just being, yeah, okay, cool. There would probably be more arguing and negotiating. The great lords of Westeros all agreeing on something just on a whim like that is pretty unrealistic. But because they're rushing, it makes sense that they would just blaze through that. It's kind of one of the things, like, I'm not going to keep complaining that they rush, because they've been rushing for several seasons, and it's just kind of like, yeah, well, that's what they do, right?
Yeah,
it's like, that's what we should expect. We all knew this episode would be rushed. Like,
they're hitting tentpole moments, and are giving us great imagery.
Yeah.
And at this point, what else do you expect?
And they're giving us the ability, intentionally or not, to figure out what could have happened if it wasn't rushed. And that's part of the fun, is us slowing it down for ourselves and imagining what it could look like and what it will look like in the books. Of course, we don't know exactly, but it provides us a lot to talk about. But let's back it up for a second, give a couple quick announcements, and then get into the meat of the material, as well as a lot of other great things we have prepared. Our postseason schedule, we should talk about that. That's important, because as I said, the characters are scattering, but we are not going anywhere. We will be continuing to cover the fandom and all the great conversations and scripted episodes we will be putting out. We'll be continuing at the pace if anything, it's going to increase. We have a live stream twice a month from now on. One of them will be on a Tuesday, and one of them will be on a Saturday. So one Tuesday and one Saturday every month, we'll do a live stream. The Saturday ones and Tuesday ones topics will be TBA. Sean will be on some of the Saturday ones. The Tuesdays are difficult for him, but Saturdays are okay for you, so we'll get you in there.
Team Baratheon ancestors. That's what we're gonna do every time. TBA.
That's right. Every as often as possible, you'll be reading the books. I'm doing a reread, so we have to be looking for all these new things. Like, I haven't done a reread since I think season 5. And so there's a lot of like plot points to look for the foreshadowing, see if it's going to be in the books or not. There's a lot of guesswork involved, but if you see the foreshadowing in the books, it really makes it a lot more likely that it's going to happen. So then there's a lot of these things for us to dig through and look around, like foreshadowing for stuff with Dany, or the opposite, or foreshadowing that this is not how it's going to go, or you could see the key differences,
That's the thing that I've thought about a lot, is that for better or worse, especially recently in the show, I feel like almost anything they do, you can look back and find foreshadowing for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So on one hand, it makes it hard to predict, and they get us with these surprises. But on the other hand, it makes it hard to believe that's what they really meant, too. It seems like they just set it up so they could do anything, and they're just trying to surprise us.
A good example of that is, it's been confirmed from the scripts that it was Snow in Daenerys' vision of the Undying when she saw the throne room. Now, it's not that they had decided that Snow would be falling on King's Landing during some final climactic scene. And it's not that they had decided that it would, that they were giving themselves the option to have Ash instead. but it made them. It forced them to have it snow during that scene because they had done that in that vision in the past, which is, it wasn't weird, but it was something they had to do to follow up with that. And that's part of the problem with plotting out such a huge story so far in advance, and then realizing that some of these things won't quite work because of honestly, if we're being fair, things that George R. Martin will never have to worry about. Yeah. George R. Martin doesn't have to worry about actor contracts and set locations and hiring just literally hundreds of people and all these other things that go into making a TV show that sometimes I think we don't give enough credit to how much work that is and how difficult it is. And just how amazing some of the people who, aren't the writers. We complain about the writing a lot, but there's this, that's only one, it's a major part of the team, but there's a lot of other people involved.
And when the writers are also directors and producers, they have a lot of other responsibilities. Yeah. And I don't think that necessarily excuses bad writing. One thing they could do with those responsibilities is delegate them to people who could do a better job writing. But
I sympathize with the whole concept of the ideas floated. Why didn't they hand the show off to somebody else? Just like, okay, I agree that maybe they could have, but maybe it wasn't feasible. This is a really big, deep, involved project. I'm sure there were people who would have wanted to do it, but maybe they wouldn't have done a good job.
All the relationships that they've developed, it would be hard to transfer all that over. Not to mention they have momentum of their life committed to this. They care about it, even if they seem to be screwing it up. Even if they're rushing it, doesn't mean they don't care about it. It doesn't mean they don't want to do it their way or whatever.
So this isn't an absolution, because we don't know that that's the case, but we don't know that it's the case. For example, nobody knows who left that cup in the screen. Like, we don't know where that came from, but Emilia Clarke is pretty sure it wasn't one of the cast because they're all very careful about that. But she did mention that Dave and Dan were extras in that scene as wildlings, and they're not as careful because they're not on camera.
They're not used to having to be careful about that.
Right, so it's possible that was one of them, which would be pretty funny if it was the main guys screwing it up again. Anyway, a question from S. Nick. What about a season 6 review than a series review, since we can see it differently now, knowing how it ends? Other ideas would be reanalyzing other seasons. So many things will be different knowing where it all leads. I completely agree.
I don't think anything's changed. There's no reason to review anything. No.
First step is to reread the books for me. But I think rewatching the show is also going to be valuable, and we may do that as well. But I think books first, and then we'll see about rewatching the show. A good thing to do I think the time to rewatch the show will be when the prequel show is going to start. Around that time, that will be because they're definitely going to make connections between the show, more so than they, or maybe not more so, but they'll connect the show to the new show maybe more than they connect it to the books, but maybe not. We don't know. It's all up in the air. George is working on the new show, so his input is hopefully going to keep the show canon pretty well aligned with book canon. It's hard enough to keep the show and book canon straight. So it's nice if they line up well. But we'll have to see about that. So a couple other quick announcements. Jenny's song. Well, I put up a Patreon goal at the beginning of the season, expecting it to be kind of out of reach, but y'all have responded really, really positively to that, much quicker than I would have thought. So very, very thankful for that. It means a lot to us. And it also means I got to get going on this because y'all crossed that threshold. And that means I got to work on it. I'm excited. I'm glad we got there.
I had mentioned the idea of doing like a metal cover of this song.
Yeah.
Someone on Twitter linked me to a drum and bass remake of this song, which is pretty awesome. It's like electronic drum and bass, kind of a quick paced electronic genre. Yeah, I loved it.
That sounds really good. Yeah, so speaking of patrons, that was the most recent milestone. And if y'all haven't heard, we're going to be upping our Patreon rates for bonus episodes at the end of the month. We said end of the season. We'll go ahead and let it run out the end of the month. So starting on June 1st, the rates will go up. But if you come in now, you get grandfathered in at the old rate. So good way to keep that rate low for the long term rather than paying a bit more. But do what you like, spend what you like, give what you think is worth it. And we will appreciate it. All right. So also... Yeah, and maybe we'll dance. Yeah. Also in that line, I'm behind on giving y'all nicknames. Part of becoming a patron means that you can request us to make a nickname for you. And because we've gotten so many new patrons that I've fallen behind on that. So I apologize if you're still waiting for a name or a welcome email. The last few days I haven't sent the welcome emails. I usually try to send them within 48 hours, but It's been too hectic with the final season and the final episode, and so many of y'all coming in at once. So
did we already use?
I'll catch up.
Generic nickname A1 and generic nickname A2. We're gonna have to go to the B's.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's just too many of those. Like a whole squad of A's, B's, and C's, and I'm really running out of names here. So let's get into some questions here from Benjamin Kerbel. I do not know how to say your name. I apologize. Will Jon find love with a wildling north of the Wall? Will he go back to Castle Black, or is he just going in exile to atone for what he did? And related question from Perry, a super chat, who says the Night's Watch issue is murky. Members of the Watch escorted Jon back north, but who was the the Lord Commander, and who was there to give Jon his oath? Do you think the sentence was just to appease Grey Worm in the moment? I think that was part of it, the appeasing Grey Worm, because Grey Worm wanted justice, but I don't think that Jon's going to just come back. One other question we got is, can't Bran pardon Jon once Grey Worm's out of the picture and other people who are mad at Jon? Can he just pardon him? Like, well, yeah, he could, but I don't think he's gonna.
Yeah, exactly. There's all kinds of things he could do, but that's part of why they picked him. He's not going to do those things,
Yeah.
They're not trying to angle some way to make Jon be king. Jon didn't want to be king anyway. Yeah. Like, I think that a couple things I want to say. I saw a lot of comments and memes along the lines of, well, Jon, to make peace with Grey Worm and the Unsullied, we have to send you north. Jon sees Grey Worm and the Unsullied sailing away. Sorry, Jon's a promise, But I think that also people like wondering, how come no one mentioned Jon as a candidate to be king? I think a couple reasons. One, they know he doesn't want to be king.
Well, and because he wasn't really politically an option.
Right, because they knew it would be shut down. Like, it would be someone standing up and proposing Jon, Sansa would have been like, please sit down.
Yeah, I mean, Grey Worm would never accept that. He was, he was in a tough spot because if Grey Worm got too bloody, he would find himself killed. They would, those thousands of Northerners outside the walls would be a problem. And he didn't want to stay. He's not like, oh, I want to stay here in Westeros. This is where I'm going to make my home. He wanted to see justice done and go. And that doesn't mean getting himself killed in the process necessarily. So he has, he was negotiating from a position of strength, but it wasn't from a position of absolute power. So it had to be a compromise. And that's what Tyrion said, it was like, no one's happy. That's a sign of a good compromise, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, there was a lot of candidates that Grey Worm would probably have accepted most candidates, but no way he was going to accept Jon. And that is just a negotiating point. He was not on the table. It was an option.
The vote would fall apart. Like, they don't necessarily need consensus. And again, they didn't define the rules of this vote. Let's just say that they had proposed 3 different people, and one person got 4, and one person got 4, and one person got 3. So no one got a majority. What if it was 4-4 or 4-3-3 or whatever? You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? How someone could have got more votes than anyone else without even getting a majority. So would they go with that? Would everyone? They whatever way they do it, they have to pretty much get everyone on board.
The book versions of the Great Councils, there's lots of arguing. It takes days and weeks.
Exactly.
And people like it's suggested that there's like bribery and things like that going on.
Backroom maneuvering, and you can imagine this is maybe a little too tidy. And we can go on and on about how we wish they spent more time in this, but they got to get to it. They got to get to it. So it makes sense to me that they don't bother someone bringing up Jon and getting shut down. They don't bother bringing up 3 different nominations and then debating how to narrow it down. They just have everyone agree.
Partly because we won't have heard of these characters,
that's
right?
True
like
also,
they didn't because the rushing and the keeping the character, the size of the cast in line, which is already a huge cast. There's already people who watch the show that still don't know some characters' names. Like we don't have that problem. Y'all don't have that problem, but that is a thing out in the general Game of Thrones fandom where people still are like, wait, what's that guy's name? And so you can't just go throwing in like random characters who might be a king someday, because no one's going to remember who that is except us. And so that would be cool for us, but that's not fair for us to expect them to make the show that way.
Our response still would be like, what, this person whose name got mentioned one time is being nominated for king? That doesn't make sense.
We know they're not going to be the king. We know it's just running through the hoops, just showing us the run. It's not actually, no one's fooled by any of that. So they may, in that sense, I don't mind them skipping ahead. There's a lot of other things that I don't want them to rush, but this kind of thing, would have been too much for them to do. The undertaking of showing all of it would have been not great TV, So we have to concede some things. Like if we want more logistics, we want them to pay more attention to these details, we still have to give some of them up because some of them just aren't going to be good TV. We have to admit that that's the case.
It wouldn't have been too much for them to tell us that was Howland Reed there, though.
Oh, God, yeah. I really wanted to know who those dudes' names were. Just give us their names. Just say it like Lord Blank, Lord Blank, Lord Blank. Okay, done.
Yeah,
like,
just call on them as they vote. Yeah.
I obviously agree, but I would like to point out that in terms of it being Howland Reed or who it is, Sansa made it clear that she's not part of the Seven Kingdoms. She's not ruled by Bran. And so none of those men should be bannermen to Sansa because otherwise they wouldn't have voted.
That's probably true. Yeah, that's good.
So
yeah,
you can assume that they're not
Reed.
Manderleys or whatever any Reeds or any house that would be subject to them.
I want to totally agree with you, but there's still like inconsistency that they presented us with. Like, why is Arya getting to vote? Why is Brienne there? If those characters can be there, even if they don't get to vote, Mira could have been there, man. She was on that journey with Bran.
Next question, why did Grey Worm just lay down? He lost Mel and now Dany. I can't see him doing anything but fighting Jon till his death one way or another. He wouldn't just arrest him and let the Lords of Westeros decide what to do. I disagree. I think that is what he would do because he knows it's not his job. Tyrion pointed out what he already knew. It's not your place. And Grey Worm it had to agree with that because it's true. He's like, well, yeah, I'm not the king of Westeros. I have no authority here, but I do have the position of,
He has authority in King's Landing.
Yes, he has authority because he has an army, right? He's not trying to claim political power. He's not like, I'm not trying to make this decision but I will get but I am not going to just lay down here.
Yeah.
And that's what she's saying. Why did he lay down? Well, he didn't lay down. Jon would have probably been named king if it weren't for Grey Worm's presence. And that's, a big deal. And so he didn't lay down. He just wasn't willing to die for it.
Yeah.
And I understand that
his men die, more innocent people die.
It's not just him, right? Yeah. It's his men. Yeah. He's responsible for their lives too. And they're not necessarily just willing to go to the grave just because their queen died too. Like she freed them. They're not slaves, right? They can be upset, they can demand justice, but they're not just going to necessarily fight to the death over this and
in a foreign land over a foreign leader.
Yeah. He wanted to go to Nath. He probably had that in his mind already. He arguably was unhappy with Dany appointing him commander of all his armies. He's like, I had this plan to go to Nath just because Missandei is dead. That doesn't mean I don't want to leave. He's still kind of, you get the sense that he was just helping her complete her quest, and then he kind of wanted to go. So he was
similar to Tyrion. Tyrion's like, gotta be hand. All right.
Yeah, I really like that. By the way, it's kind of out of sequence here, but within like 5 minutes of episode 1, season 1, the Hand of the King is shown to be a crap job. Like Ned is like, ugh. The
last hand was just killed.
Yeah,
Ned realizing he has to leave his home and his family to go do it.
Yeah, it is an honorable, noble job, but it is a bad job. Like it is a stressful, thankless, tireless, job. It's a fair. It's kind of weird seeing him fail upwards like that, but it is. I kind of agree with that logic that Bran presented there, that it is kind of a punishment.
This has come up in discussion several times in the past couple weeks, but there's a movie called Fog of War. It's a documentary about Robert McNamara.
Yeah. McNamara.
Man, awesome. He totally shouldn't change his name. If you were on Twitter, that's what it is.
You're crushing me with the puns today.
But he was Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War, and he didn't want to be at war in Vietnam. He was against it, but it's his job. He had to go represent America and the president and all these press conferences, just reporting on what's going on in Vietnam. And he was sort of a villain during that time period, even though he personally didn't even want to be in Vietnam. So it's interesting people in positions of power, especially like second tier levels of power, where they have all this responsibility, but don't necessarily have the authority,
Yeah. Nancy Groth asks, WTF happened to the Dothraki? Would it have been too much to take 10 seconds to say they were happy we got ships to them to go back in the Great Grass Sea? Yeah, at least we saw it. We saw them getting on ships, but that was it. I mean,
some of them. It's not.
Well, you can assume they were all going.
But yeah. Maybe you could. Part of why it's a little harder for me to assume is because they don't like ships in the first place. They were willing to do it for Dany, but now Dany's having there. I don't know.
Well, how are they? I mean, they want to go home, though.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's a pretty safe assumption they want to go home. I don't have a problem assuming that. I agree that it would have been better to have more, but I don't have any problem assuming that they're going to go home, that they want to go home. That totally makes sense to me. But yeah, I would have liked more. But it's not a surprise. We knew that we would get very little because this is how it's always been. Why would they now start paying attention to Dothraki after kind of keeping him on the side for so long?
I mean, it was one of the reasons I had a hard time predicting Dany dying. By the way, had someone posting the image of Rob, not Mac from It's Always Sunny, just like eating the contract. And, covers bases someone to Sean with his notes after his predictions. Like, I never predicted Dany wouldn't die. But part of my prediction of Dany not dying, because I didn't see how they would handle the entities surrounding her. I wasn't sure what would happen with the Unsullied, the Dothraki, and Drogon. And I feel like they did a pretty good job with Drogon. They did a pretty good job, I guess, with the Unsullied, but they pretty much did no job with the Dothraki. And it's one of my biggest disappointments of the show is I wanted to have some named characters discussing it. It would have been so awesome to have them debate on whether or not they're going to go back on ships and something like, no, we're staying. They offered the Unsullied the Reach. We can go to the Reach. Something like that, And again, it would have taken like maybe 7 whole lines of dialogue.
Well, I agree with you. I think it would have gone the same way. The result would have been the same, though. As much as I would have wanted to see it, it's not like it would have gone differently. Like the Unsullied forming a house, even though they can't have kids, makes sense because they don't have a nation to go back to. They don't have a homeland. The Dothraki do, so that you can assume they would want to go there. But the Unsullied need different treatment because they don't have a home to go back to. So I can kind of understand why they paid more attention to them. Even though I totally agree, I wish they had paid more attention.
Just like Mira, they were a part of this journey for Dany, longer and more so, and just get nothing.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so next question from Lady Ardross. I got my Arya farming moment, and all hail the Queen in the North. I'm a happy Stark bannerman right now, and thank you, History of Westeros. You are all the best. Well, we appreciate that, Lady Ardross. And I want to say just a moment to talk about expectations and what people got from the final couple episodes. It really, really depends on where you're sitting. I don't want to tell anybody. I've said a lot about being nice to your fellow fandom members, but I don't want to step over the line and tell anyone how to feel. That's inappropriate. That's not my place. But I do want to at least offer a suggestion on how to treat other people. Because look, if you're not a big Daenerys fan, then this wasn't a huge deal to you. Almost every character got a pretty reasonable ending. Not necessarily reasonable, not necessarily what you wanted, but a somewhat happy ending. Like a positive, okay, that's a good ending for them. Most of the characters got a decent ending. Grey Worm's was one of the few that I would actually call bittersweet. Dany's was not bittersweet. That was bitter.
Yeah.
Jon's was pretty sweet. Yeah, he had to kill Dany, which is awful. That was traumatizing for him. He'll probably never love again.
Grey Worm's is significantly more bitter than sweet. I think there's little to no
which
sweet.
Ones?
Grey Worm. I think there's little to no sweet for him.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. He's the same situation as Dany, where he basically had no one left anymore. Like he made it through everything, but
He's
it's like
at least
Miri
alive.
Mazdur. What is life when you have nothing around you? Yeah. So you're right. It's definitely more bitter than sweet. But like Bran, it's a pretty happy ending for Bran. Tyrion, I mean, yeah, he has to work hard, but that's bittersweet. If anything, that's not bad. Maybe it's a stretch to call that bitter, but it's not a total win. Same with Tormund and Ghost and Sansa and Arya. They all had pretty good endings or great ending. Like Sansa's ending is a huge win for Sansa fans.
Yeah.
You can't really do better than that. Unless she was actual queen of all of Westeros, which might not have been better.
Yeah,
that might have been. Some people
Yeah.
might have wanted that for her.
Jon was more happy about being king of the North than being king of Westeros.
Yeah. So there's so I got a feel for Dany fans because they kind of got a raw deal. Like that. If you backed a certain horse, well, the Daenerys horse turned to be the tragic horse to back. You know what I mean? Like all these other characters, you could at least have something to be happy about for the most part. Again, Grey Worm, pretty good argument that his ending is pretty damn bitter. But so Team Dany, it's just more suffering for them because that's part of the same association in a lot of ways. Anyway, so I want to make that. I wanted to say that because it's a lot of the arguments I think come from people not necessarily understanding how much other people like certain characters. And that's an emotional thing. It's not a logic thing necessarily. Your favorites aren't based on, things that you can necessarily point to all the time. Sometimes it's just like a subconscious thing. It's like, I like that character and I can't necessarily say all the things. I can't put it all into words why. You know what I mean? That's common enough out there. All right, let's keep going. From Valyrian Echoes. What are your thoughts about the positioning of the two main characters and climactic scene in Act 1? I think Act 3 would have been more suitable. P.S. A lost moment of the evil three-eyed raven getting his way fleshed out as a happy ending. Yeah, we wondered if that would be a thing, if there would be any sort of epilogue-y type, there's a little evil king after all. We didn't really think it was likely, but the theory was worth putting out there. But I think that the two main characters in Climax Scene, it had other collateral damage from rushing that plot
Yeah,
point.
I could easily see there being an episode or two spent on Jon's dilemma of killing Daenerys and whether you're doing it. And more than that, I heard some people were like, this right here, one season. I don't agree with that. And this is something we're going to get into on Book to Show much more extensively. If you picture roughly that this season, 6 episodes are books 6 and 7. There's a splitting point somewhere in there. So it might be that the final 2 episodes we got are all of book 7, for example.
Possible.
It's possible. Like, we don't know where it is, and we're going to go into that a little bit more, but it's something for people to think about, I think.
Even in the show, I was thinking about in season 1, how, like, there's this clear parallel to Ned, to Varys coming to Ned, saying, look, here's the things you should do. I won't do that for my honor or my life. All right, but what about for your family? Okay, I'll do it. With Ned and Varys, that was stretched out over a few scenes, a couple episodes at least. I wish I could remember more specifically, but it's at least 2 episodes, maybe 3 episodes, and several scenes for Ned to go through this realization. With Jon, it was like one scene. Tyrion goes to talk to him, Jon goes to kill Dany. It just immediately happened. There was no internal struggle coming around or series of conversations. And then even after that, we don't see Jon again at all for any of it. Imagine the turmoil he's going through being imprisoned, It wouldn't be crazy.
We got more scenes of Ned in the Black Cells, and that was, not quite as big, but pretty big. And
I can imagine a conversation of Grey Worm going in to talk to Jon.
Yeah.
Imagine Grey Worm might feel guilt over killing those Lannister soldiers. Grey Worm probably is unsettled with himself, He
might. Yeah, he might. It's possible. Yeah, there's a lot of options.
That would be a great POV to have, a great conversation to happen between Grey Worm and Jon, Jon conveying to Grey Worm how he had to kill Ollie. My mind just spins what Martin's going to tell us. It would just completely skipped over.
You could say, I've been here. I've had to execute people that were, I do. Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of opportunity there.
Something Jon's saying, maybe even stopping Grey Worm from executing him,
Yeah. From DTS, confused about Bran. Are we supposed to think he played everyone or just did nothing and waited for others to arrive at a future he foresaw while edging them to those decisions? Just felt weird. And also from Sir Hype the Dank, was Bloodraven's plan the whole time to usher in a newish government via Bran? Was Bran's whole arc just setting up the dominoes, like revealing R plus L equals J? Yeah, I think there is a lot of that is not unlikely. I'm referring to the domino tumbling thing. We're not quite. It's clear that Bran manipulated events. What his end game was isn't entirely clear, but given where he ended up, it seems likely that that's what it was. Whether it was out of altruism or, a sense of this is the best for everyone or something else. Well, we didn't see any evidence that it's something else. We just saw evidence that it was what they thought was right. And so I think that, yes, I think there's a good chance that he edged certain things in a certain direction so that it would end up like this, and that this was a way to move things forward. They wanted to change the system of government, and by driving a wedge between Jon and Dany, they really kind of showed that. If Jon and Dany didn't have that wedge, well, maybe he would have married her and then been stuck, and then they would have not been able, and then they would have gone down this dark path, and Jon would have been too late to bring him over. There's a lot of different ways.
It seemed like he was literally willing to be burned to death rather than break his vow. Like, if Dany wants to kill me because she thinks I'm a threat, then she's a queen. She can decide that. I'm not gonna go against her.
I agree, but then which was very much like we predicted, that it wouldn't. Jon's own life would not move him, but if it became someone else's life, it would move him. That's exactly what happened. Tyrion, as Jon's walking out the door, just like as Varys is walking out the door to Ned, Varys pauses and says, well, what about Sansa's life? What about the life of your daughter? Is that precious to you? And Tyrion says the same thing. Well, what about your family? What about when she goes north? What about them? It's the exact same. It was a wonderful way to call back that moment, and it was perfect for that moment, and it really got Jon. It's really what moved him. I think that was the thing that pushed him over the edge there. Well, and that's what pushed him over the edge to confront her. What actually pushed him over the edge was him when he did confront her, and she's like, and she says the thing she said to him about, I know what's best, and we make the choice, and we can't hide behind small mercies. It was, and when he had that very unsatisfying answer to, you burned all those children, and it's like, she's like, oh, well, Cersei's fault, like, ugh.
She was reinforcing all the things Tyrion was concerned about.
Yes. Basically, all the things Tyrion was worried about, she confirmed.
I also thought that was a good scene, an interesting dynamic they had, because she's like delighted with her victory. She's like reminiscing on her childhood dreams, just looking at her. And Jon's like, I can't believe what you did. Like he's coming in with this anger and frustration, and she's
really
kind of happy and content. And it was like such a clash between them. They're in such different places.
It was. I thought that was really well done, because as painful as it was to see Dany not be a good person, that was authentic. The way they played that out, authentic in that her beliefs were, she was legitimately shocked at his reaction. It was like, oh, I don't understand this. Like, this is the good thing.
If he'd come in here, I even thought about this. You totally convinced me, but I started to apply it in a different way. Still haven't fully thought it out. By the way, once again, I said this last week. Still this week, I have not fully got my thoughts together. There's so much to it.
Yeah,
the longer episodes, So I wondered if there was something that Tyrion could have said. Oh, I'm going to back up again because another point I wanted to make. Thought it was interesting, meaningful, deliberate, both by the writers and the character Dany. She gave that speech in Valyrian.
Oh,
she gave that speech
really,
in Valyrian.
Yeah, I really liked that. That was really good.
So when Tyrion came up to her in that moment, I wondered if there was anything that she could have said to him that might have alleviated his concerns. If he was just, no matter what, just going to pluck that pin off and throw it, or if he had come up to her and she had said, look, I'm sorry about how things went down. We'll talk about it later. Yeah. Now, then maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he would have, But you point out it doesn't make sense for it. She's giving her speech of triumph. She's not compromising here. She's not backing down. She's
not compromising, nor is she going to do it in a public place in front of all of her men.
She might quietly alleviate his concern.
You can read body language to a certain extent, and she just can't do that. Not to mention, he betrayed her.
Right.
She straight up.
Yeah. So same thing, I wonder when Jon went to confront her, if there's something that she could have said that he might have been, if she had said, like, it's terrible the sacrifice we had to make to get here, but at least you done it. And he would have been like,
but yeah,
well,
we can't do it again. He comes in all mad, and she's just like, when I was a kid, I dreamed of this throne. I thought it would be a lot bigger, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's just totally on another plane of thinking right now.
He's ready to argue. Yeah. She's happy with her position, and neither of them are making any attempt to find middle ground. And and you just see it boil over. Oh, man, I was because I was pretty convinced that he wasn't going to kill her, and they were hugging. And I'm going to say, I wish I knew. I wanted time how long that hug was. But I'm going to say in about 1 second, I was like, she's standing too close to him. And in my mind, I was still like, he could just kill her if he wanted. He's like Ramsay and Roose. But it's still in my mind, I was like, wouldn't that be funny? And I'm like, oh, no, he really did it. Let me eat my notes real quick. Let me eat my notes.
I was you, as anyone who's listened knows, I was pretty sure back and forth on who would die. I settled on Dany dying and Jon not. But I still was pretty against the idea of Jon being the one to do it. Even though after the fact it makes so much sense with Nyssa and all that. And I know it doesn't exactly line up.
And I've always really wanted them both to die very much. The idea of if Jon killed Daenerys and then the Dothraki blood riders roll up and they're like, wait, what did you do? I'm killing you right now.
Yeah, blood of my blood. They're supposed to, it's not consistent with
I don't know exactly how he got out of there and was still captured and was not killed.
It's because the Unsullied got him.
Yeah, and the Unsullied just had the discipline to not kill him.
And there are Northern troops there, too. Yeah, remember that confrontation that started to happen when Grey Worm was just executing Lannisters.
Grey Worm isn't an idiot.
Yeah, the Unsullied on one side and the Northern troops on the other all drew their weapons. Yeah. And Davos was like, oh, calm down. You can imagine Davos probably had to do some more calming down over the following moments after Jon killed her.
But it's very Jon, too, that he didn't even try to not face the music. No one else saw it. Yeah. He could have just walked out of the room, grabbed his dagger, walked away, and they would have been like, well, who did that? They would have accused him. They would have been like, well, did you do it? But they wouldn't.
They wouldn't know. It'd be hard. One angry person with a crossbow. Yeah, I even kind of joked that
Jon's not even like, he was just like so distraught that he's not even paying attention to the dragon that's 2 feet behind him that's making all this noise. He was that distraught.
Also, he does that little thinking ahead.
He also does not think ahead. You're right. Jon is not.
If he had thought ahead, he might not have done anything differently, but he might have done something a little differently if he thought ahead a little bit.
Yeah, he went in there with his passion and his personality without a plan.
I joked that
it
would have been if someone like walks into the room and Jon could be like, Drogon just burned her and flew off. I don't even know what happened. But someone else joked back that Jon would just lock himself in a cell. People would come up and like, "Why are you locked in a cell?" Like, I killed Dany.
I deserve it.
Yeah,
I deserve it. And then it's the thing, like when you get to the moment where Tyrion comes to him after Tyrion's been set free, or not set free, but comes to Jon and says, tells him all the stuff that's happened because it's clear that like a month or two has passed, if not more. And he's talking to Jon. He's telling him all the stuff that happens, and Jon, it's like Jon's not listening. He's just like, "Was it the right thing? Did I do the right thing?" It's all he can think about. And given that they're rushing, that was a good beat to hit. They get the skipping time and not showing all that reaction, fast forwarding to after everyone's calmed down, kind of makes sense. You see that at least they gave us time lapse in that sense, which it shows that Jon is still distraught this long after, because it would be really awful for him to just hand. It's like, oh well, she's gone. Let's move on. You can't do that. Like, they've hand waved too much, so I'm glad they didn't hand wave that.
I might have got it wrong about Dany surviving, but this isn't really about going over all of our predictions. This is really more about going over all my predictions that were correct. That's what this is really about. And I did predict.
Here it comes.
I wasn't even going to say anything about our hero, the Master of Coin. But I did say that I did predict that we would have a small time jump. And we would
you're right.
We would kind of scroll through where are they now of all the different characters,
Yeah.
I just have to say, Sean, Bran thing, and to everyone listening, I really was so upset after the episode. Originally, I was like, my first thought was that was my biggest complaint. I was most pissed off about. I eventually had something I was more frustrated about, but I just have to say here and now, it's never going to happen in the books. You all know it. Like, there's so many Reachmen that will be the Lord of Highgarden or Lady or whatever. But there's a lot of Tyrells. The High Towers are coming up hot.
Straight out of Old Town.
Yeah, exactly.
Bran might have a lot of killing to do.
Or Bran might have a lot of killing to do.
I said Bran, I meant Bran. Sorry. Bran might have a lot of killing to do.
Yeah.
So it won't happen, okay? But it happened here in the show, and the show is a joke. So there we go. You heard it from me. That's the thing.
She's
that
just Bran washed.
Everyone was Bran washed.
Everyone was Bran washed. That's how he got elected.
Bran
king.
washed in that council, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question kind of relates to that from Kim Abridged. Is Bran the king or Three-Eyed Raven? Hasn't Bran said he's not Bran? Children of the Forest won or the Starks won? Night King and Three-Eyed Raven have jumbled all this up for me. Children of the Forest created both. Okay, well, one thing, I know this isn't exactly what your question is aimed at, but I want to say there is no winning here. Taking the throne is not a win. I think that's a very important, and that's not necessarily what you were trying to say. Maybe it's just the way you worded your question, so I'm not coming at you here, but I want to say that's an important lesson here. The throne is not a win. It's a bad thing. It's corrupting. It's evil. That's why they gave it to Bran, was because they hope that he can handle it, because everyone else that's touched it, for the most part, it hasn't gone well. So I don't think it's a win when your house gets the throne, or your favorite house gets the throne. You could say the Starks won in a sense because so many of them survived. That's the win, that they get happy endings, or somewhat happy endings, depending on which Stark you're thinking about. So, and the Children of the Forest are dead. According, like the way it's been portrayed in the show, they're gone. So I don't see that could be a win, dying out's not really a win. But Bran is, it's not super clear in the show what the Three-Eyed Raven means in terms of like a collective, is to see how much of these past Three-Eyed Ravens are in him, or is he more of a unique personality that just has a slight influence from those past personalities? It's very much not clear. So it's hard to say, but that's kind of why we were leaving open room for, his eyes to turn blue at the end, if something like that, even if he was even king, which we didn't know. That was just one of our guesses. And
you got pretty confident about that guess right at the end there.
I did. Yeah.
What guess?
Bran
becoming the king, yeah.
You want to elaborate on why you became more confident?
Well, I said it on. I think I said it on some of the predictions episodes. The bookie odds were really a selling point because to me, it's like it's not like this is hidden information. It's like nobody. It's like a sporting event where we don't know the outcome. There are people who know, people who worked on the show, people who know what happened. Like it's not like there aren't several hundred people who know the truth.
That's true.
Like if the bookies know, they're probably right. You know, I'm just like that was my resignation. I was like,
it's kind of a meta reason.
Yeah, and at first, and when I realized that, I almost wish I hadn't said anything because it's like, well, that's almost proof, and that's not. I don't want to. It's almost a leak, so I kind of felt bad about saying it, but it didn't occur to me. I hadn't fully thought it through, and after the fact, I was like, yeah, that was too concrete of evidence for me to spill but I just didn't think of it in that way at first, and I'd already said it. So anyway, sorry guys. If you considered that a spoiler, I apologize. But you know,
as you were giving your when you first brought it up, because a lot of the theories are Bran is the Night King, all this stuff. I kind of like roll my eyes.
It was too similar to that, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and so this one, when you were bringing this up, now to be fair, a lot of times when people make this Bran is the Night King argument, they follow up with some evidence, and I'm like, oh, I guess. I still don't believe it. You're not convincing me, but I guess you're not being completely silly. There's something behind this, you know. But it's still something I wouldn't expect you to be behind. So when you brought up the Bran could be king, I was like, really?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people had that reaction,
actually. But you started giving your reasons before you said anything about the bookies, and I was like, well, I guess there are little bits of evidence. I had even also considered the idea of like, okay, so Dany burns King's Landing, and everyone looks at all this evidence of how, see, there's all along they had this set up for it. But if Dany hadn't burned King's Landings, see, all along they had this evidence for it. You know, there's all kinds of evidence that she wouldn't do it too. So there might be evidence that Bran that could lead. If they do make him be the king, I guess I can see how they might have set that up. You know, but if they didn't, I can also see how they didn't set that up.
Yeah,
you know?
well, and the other problem, and this is the big flaw in the theory, or a big flaw in the theory, was that we knew that the showrunners told us there were three big twists. I think three things that really surprised them that George told them about the plot. One of them was Hodor, the other was Shireen, and the third was left up in the air. Well, to me, Jon killing Dany's a big damn twist, but so is Bran becoming king. So which of those was? So that was part of the argument against it. Is like, well, one of these can't be true, or one of them isn't a big twist, but they're both big twists. So that was part of the struggle there.
I feel like, and again, I haven't read all the books, but even not having read all the books, I'm very aware of Nissa Nissa. I'm very aware of all these theories and prophecies and evidence, but I was never aware of some theory that Bran might become king. There's lots of other things that, like the idea, you know, maybe Dany just totally burning King's Landing. That might be shocking, but it's not really a twist because there was a lot of evidence for that, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea of Jon killing Dany might be shocking, but not really a twist because there's a lot of evidence for that, but maybe more so in the books, you know. But D&D would be aware of that. So, you know?
Yeah, you're
but
right. Yeah.
I don't feel like there's a lot of evidence for Bran becoming king, so I do feel like maybe that was the bigger of the twists.
Right on. Okay, let's move on. Sir Matthew of the House Begonius asked, whatever happened to the Night King's mark on Bran? Well, I assume because, like the other magic that was in play from him, it died with him. Well, just like whatever magic animated the Whites and the other White Walkers died with him. So whatever, you know, the mark ceased to matter. We guess that it might not have ceased to matter, but it looks like it ceased to matter. And that's a reasonable consistency there, given that everything else about him seems to have died with him. So why not this also?
I mean, maybe it's a badge of honor to him now, a reminder of the evils that whatever.
Yeah, that's true. From Tracy Metherell, when Drogon was mourning his mommy, nosing her to try to revive her, it broke me. I cried tears of joy when good boy Ghost finally got his pets. Oh yeah, we were yelling at the screen, pet him, pet him. And it was almost like, I'm not glad he didn't pet Ghost on the way down, but it was symbolic of him, you know, rejecting his Stark heritage, and then he comes back to it. So, given that, I'm okay. You know, that they had planned all along for him to eventually pet Ghost. You know, that kind of does.
It's more okay.
Heal that
okay,
wound.
but it's more okay.
It is more okay. You're right. That's a good way to put it. It's not okay, but it's more okay. And I agree. There is one of the things coming in book to show. We have some really cool quotes we pulled that has to do with some foreshadowing for Bran, some foreshadowing for Great Council, as well as there's a reference to a dragon nosing another dragon, thinking it's not dead, you know, wanting it to come back to life or fly with it. It's very sad. Somehow these large, terrible, killer nuclear lizards can make us sad because they're just a pet that loves their mother. By the way, Jon was stabbed in the heart, and a red priest fixed him. Maybe Drogon was just carrying Dany
to Kinvara.
To Kinvara,
Yes.
to go heal her. Yeah, she's gonna come back, man. I'm telling you, there's hope yet.
Oh, that would be something. By the way, they foreshadowed. They foreshadowed a 10-year reunion.
They're just gonna change Lady Stoneheart into Daenerys instead. They're just suborning that plot. It's heart. I mean, she was stabbed in the heart, right? Yeah, it's just like Stoneheart. That's why I didn't kill her, because her heart was stone. It just broke the blade. Next question from Lil Angry Irishman. I for Edmure. I was fine with the execution for what it was. Yeah, Edmure. I for Edmure. That
Sorry, I gotta back up.
Tobias Menzies is a good actor.
I wish Jon had asked Arya if he could borrow her dagger real quick before he went to see Dany.
That's just in case she's wearing some sort of armor. I want to make sure I got the really good dagger.
Anyway, sorry.
Sir Matthew of the House Begonias also says, thanks for the amazing content. Appreciate that. King Trench, long live History of Westeros. Thank you for all the amazing insight you provided to all of us that were introduced to this world via the show. Thank you, King Trench, a.k.a. Ben. We know you, buddy. Good to see you there. Thanks to Brooke Person as well for a super chat without a question. Matthias C., same deal. King Stork 1 for a very big super chat. Thank you very much. Who says, thanks for providing such a cool forum for GOT and A Song of Ice and Fire. Ashay is the best. I agree with all that. I believe Sean does as well. We do have our Facebook group for chats. We do have our Flick group for different style chats. We're on Twitter, and we will be keeping this community going on our end. Of course, it's not just us. Lots of other great podcasts and YouTubers and essay writers and just general fandom. It's a great place to be, and it's going to keep on going.
You know, there have been through my life different, I don't know, moments of change, waves of introduction of friends and new communities that I've joined, and this has been one of them. I've this huge new batch of people that I've become connected to through the show that I'm so appreciative for.
It can be like a humongous part of our lives without it being an obsessive thing, because it's just like the friends you make along the way. You're not necessarily talking about Game of Thrones with them 24/7. I mean, we are talking about it an awful lot, especially right now.
The last couple of weeks has been...
the last couple of weeks is not the best example of that counter argument there, but yeah.
We had a whole year break in between last season that I was still maintaining relationships with people that I met through this community.
Yeah, and we were writing scripted content then, and it was I like to think, good stuff. And that's what we'll be doing going forward as well. From Amber Berkshire, super chat, no question. Thank you very much. From Pop Swallop, just want to say that I love the stream, always insightful and fair to all points of view. Great job. Thank you. I also will give Pop Swallop a shout out. They put out a video that you can check out. It's a love to kind of a love letter to the fandom and various creators in the YouTube/podcast community, done via Muppet style. And it's kind of odd in a good way, to see Muppets refer to you by name. And so when the Muppets are like, I listened to History of Westeros, I was like, hey. So yeah, check them out. Pop Swallop. That's Pop SWALLOP. From DC, thank you for all the fun you bring to the fandom. Well, thank you, DC. We appreciate the support. Stark Direwolves, Grey Worm plus Island plus Poisonous Butterflies equals ha ha ha. Yeah, they even brought that up on the show. It's not like we can give them a pass, because in book canon, there's these butterflies that apparently give you this disease that kills anyone who sticks around Nath too long, except for the locals who are immune to it. They even brought that up, but Grey Worm's going there anyway, so I'm guessing he's not going to stay very long.
He might have conferred with Sam first to get some immunity to iocane powder or whatever, you know.
Got to build that immunity up. Yeah, get a few of those butterflies and build that up. From Chris Trombley, he says the same thing. Grey Worm going to Nate to see those butterflies. Yeah, you're gonna see what that's all about.
I think I groaned at the screen when Grey Worm. They said, "Oh, set the course for North" or whatever, and I'm like, "Oh,
it'll be a short visit." No. Brandon Durham says Jon should have rode Drogon and freely gave up his throne and went north on his own accord. Yeah, I wonder if he could have tried to ride Drogon, but Drogon had other plans there. Yeah, by the way, another thing I have to admit, I was wrong about. I can't remember exactly what your position was on this, but I was really sure that Arya was going to Chekhov's bow, you know? I even said it out loud during the episode when he rears back, getting ready to look like he was going to breathe fire on Jon. I was like, here comes the bow shot. And instead, he just turns his head slightly to the left and burns the throne, which was kind of cool. Like, at first, I was like, well, that's cheesy. Why would he do that? But then I thought about it more, and I was like, nah. It's clear there's a mental bond between Dany and Drogon, and even if he doesn't exactly conceptualize the deal, what's going on, if he doesn't exactly know what's happening, he knows that the Iron Throne was a source of her desire, her like lust or ambition for a long time. So he had to have some sort of sense of it in his mind, whatever that means in a magical reptile's head. He had some sense of it from her. And so seeing as it, having it be the thing that he recognized as like the end of her toxic quest that destroyed her, it's kind of cool.
I saw someone tweet that Drogon is the most woke character on Game of Thrones.
He's a real progressive there. Yeah, someone else tweeted like, I had no idea this magical lizard had such a keen eye for symbolism.
I also wanted to give them credit for the presentation. I guess, the CGI or whatever sort of direction or art to him. I felt he had character, personality. I just felt a sort of wisdom in him.
Everyone says
even.
he, them.
Yeah,
them,
you're right.
They.
I think of that sometimes too. That it's not
I
clear that
say
he's a male or the dragon's a general male or female.
Yeah. Okay. Just okay. Go on.
Thank
Sean.
you for correcting me there. Seriously, yeah. I wonder. A lot spun through my head, especially on the second watch in that moment with that stare. We even got the other stare that I was a little fixated on before, when, as Jon was kissing Dany. But wondering, what goes through a dragon's mind? What kind of intelligence do they have? Like, generally speaking, larger creatures have larger brains, have more capacity for intelligence. I even know, this is really kind of minor tangent thing, but I wondered if dragons might be just in constant pain, just the growing pains, literal growing pains of your bones as you grow. Think how much he's grown in such a short period of time. And I wonder how that affects your mentality. I wonder if he...
That's why they're so angry all the time.
Right, was following Dany as she had led him through the city to burn things, but in the back of his mind, he might have been just like Jon, like, well, I'm gonna follow my queen, but I don't know about this,
Yeah. He's probably not that conscious, but it's possible that he's feeling... I felt like he was feeling her anger. Like he feels her emotion. That seems like one thing like a dog. Like they kind of sense their master's emotions and kind of parrot that. To use another animal as a parrot that. That's kind of how I felt like she could sense his emotions, and there was a little bit of a magic to it, more than a dog. Like there's some magic to it. Like 'cause she can understand his commands and his wishes. Like she says Dracarys, and he knows exactly who she means, where that should be targeted.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like
even sometimes like the context or whatever of how he executes and
there's definitely something going on there. From Sir Troy the Steady, thank you for being our King's Justice for so long, Sir Troy. He says, I actually think Jon, Dany, Drogon, and the Iron Throne pulled off Azor Ahai, Nissa, Lightbringer, and the Darkness quite nicely there. Yeah, it was subverted from what we expected, and I do think it will be pretty significantly different in the books. But they did get all those elements together in that room for that climactic moment in a way that we did not expect, even if we predicted that Jon would kill Dany. The way all that came down in the same moment. Like, even if you predict that Jon would kill Dany, you wouldn't necessarily predict that Drogon's going to destroy the Iron Throne 3 seconds later. Like, that was... I don't think anyone predicted that. You know, you predicted those things separately. Like, yeah, the Iron Throne could be destroyed. And yeah, Dany could die. And yeah, Jon could be the one to do it. And maybe Jon could die too. But the way it all came together like that, that was...
That was another thing that I predicted, that no one would sit on the Iron Throne. I wasn't exactly sure how it would come together, how many kingdoms there would be exactly, but I kind of speculated a couple times it might only be 5 kingdoms. I thought that was weird.
I thought for sure the Iron Throne would be destroyed, but I also thought that in the symbol of the 7 kingdoms being destroyed, that no one would be ruling the majority of the kingdoms.
Yeah.
Technically, no one ruled the 7 kingdoms. Like I was right and wrong there.
Yeah, I would admit that we kind of got that wrong, at least from my perspective, because I thought that it would either be the Iron Throne not destroyed and like a new king or whatever, or it would be destroyed and they would go to independence. Like that would be, but I didn't really consider no throne, but still a contiguous 7 kingdoms. Well, 6. It's mostly still contiguous.
Some kingdoms,
Yeah, mostly the same, but somewhat different.
You got to wonder, too, if maybe generations down the line, the North will join, just like Dorne did. Once Sansa and the current generation of Northmen who made these sacrifices, especially
they're all rebuilding, right? Like,
right.
So
once they're rebuilt, and once they even see the value of joining the rest of the kingdom, how well the quote-unquote democratic system is working. I also want to point out the the idea of the throne being like the one ring, it being destroyed, just like the ring was destroyed
with extreme
Another-
fire and heat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
melting, and there's like the
literal
smoldering-
lava they're showing us pour down the steps.
Yeah, that was cool. I think they were. It seems not unlikely that that's what they were going for, and then it kind of another circle that was completed in that scene with Dany and Jon. That final moment is the completion of her vision. Shout out to Kim Renfro of Insider, who's really good at connecting these dots. And when she's in the House of the Undying vision, she reaches for the throne, and then she's distracted. She hears the dragons calling to her, and she diverts and walks off to the other side and has that scene with Drogo and the child in the tent. That is why she completes that. She actually finishes reaching out and touches the sword, the little hilt of that sword sticking out of the throne there. So it's kind of like and it's shot from the same angle too. Like it's just like the cameras from the behind and right of the throne. So it was like kind of visual storytelling come full circle, which is kind of, I often miss that. Not just because that scene was literally 6 years ago, but
By the way, there's another sort of visual storytelling parallel. Arya at the end of season 4 sailed off, like left home to sail east.
yeah,
And here leaves home to sail west.
that's a good point. Yeah, right on.
Not looking back, by the way. No.
So I asked Shay to grab this one kind of iconic, what will probably be kind of iconic shot, unless you're a Dany fan, in which case it will be Abomination, which is the shot of Jon grieving over what he's just done with the Iron Throne behind. And it's kind of just pretty poignant. You know, this is what this throne has done to them all in a way. And there's snow falling on it and all that. So it's pretty powerful. I imagine there'll be a lot of use of that image or similar ones going forward. But to back up to what came before this, she arrests Tyrion. We talked about that. And it may be a little weird that Jon was given a chance to speak to Tyrion under those circumstances, but oh well. Not too strange, I suppose. It was still very chaotic at that point. It's not like she had established her new court and all that. She hadn't even sat down on the throne yet, so it's not like everything is all orderly and organized and all that. And this was a good speech. They got their love versus, or conversation wasn't really a speech. I guess they kind of both had speeches. Tyrion kind of had a speech there, whatever. Love versus duty, duty versus love. Love is the death of duty, duty is the death of love. Very good. The way they tied that all back together, Maester Aemon. I mean, it needed to be convincing to get Jon to do it. And I think it was. Like, you know, as far as the writing, you know, I'll criticize about the writing, but in that scene, the writing was good. I thought Tyrion's speech was compelling.
To Jon,
Yeah.
I really disagree.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it more on Wednesday.
Okay, we will.
I'd have to say it here, though.
What did you think, Sean?
I for the most part liked it. Other than, like I said, I thought it was really rushed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it should have been a series of conversations. There should have been like more, rather than Jon. I could go on and on, man. Rather than Jon just going to her the next scene, having one conversation, deciding to kill her. I feel like it could have been like a series of conversations, a series of decisions she keeps to make that he keeps being frustrated by. That finally he's driven to it.
There's one part about it that I really didn't like that I should clarify. I really didn't like the reference to first they came for. That was they should not have.
That's what I was
going to
talk about.
Yeah.
On
Okay,
Wednesday,
you're right. That that slipped my mind
Yeah.
briefly, but that was really bad. They should not have done that. That's you should not refer to the Holocaust that way. That's really gross.
I also saw that complaint, and I don't have any kind of personal connection to it, so I'm hesitant to come
you
out
don't.
very hard.
So you don't get to
but,
complain much or say much. But I like people who are Jewish feel strongly,
Yeah, like
myself
you are.
included.
Yeah,
I'm
I
Jewish. And
easily can
Emmett
see
Booth
how
and Fort
people would be
Quentin
bothered
is,
by it. But
upset,
I tried to pay more attention to second watch, and again, it wouldn't have occurred to me if it wasn't brought up to me.
Yeah, well,
so,
people use that line in a lot of other contexts now, so it's easy to kind of maybe not forget, but to not realize what they're referring to. You know, kind of.
Well, part of my thought was, and maybe I'm just trying to like make peace or find middle ground, but it was worded differently. He said when she did not first they did it. Like I think they could have made it more direct parallel if they wanted to, and I want to believe they were careful to not cross that line. But obviously, to some people, they did anyway. So.
Oh yeah. It was a lot of strong reactions to that, and I wouldn't argue against.
And
that.
they also, you could see they were making these parallels, like to the way the Unsullied are lined up, looked like Nazi troops. That flag, that Targaryen flag, looks like a Nazi flag.
It was overwhelming. Yeah. It was over the top. Yeah, but you can kind of. they're trying to make it clear to the audience that Dany is definitely gone too far, while not making it as clear to the characters. That's why you brought up they couldn't understand what she was saying to the Dothraki and the Unsullied. It's much clearer to the audience. And of course, we see that amazing shot of the dragon wings behind her, which is like, whoa, that was like really powerful. But like the characters don't see that. That's for us. That's for the viewer to see. So we're sold on this. But Jon, it's supposed to be conflicting for Jon. And yeah, it was. So
I imagine, by the way, also extra hard for a Dany fan to watch her get compared to Hitler. Yeah,
like why? Like that's all. Yeah, it's terrible for someone like that. Like why would you? You don't want to see that. Even if it's done well in the books, I expect it will be. It's not going to be Nazi imagery.
Yeah,
it's like what. So let's see. Moving on. Like you said, there was a time jump. You kind of expected that, and it made sense to do. It was kind of a good thing, given that so much was rushed. At least they had this time play out. They had their. So let's talk about this great-ish council. Maybe kind of a little too small to be great, I think. I was wondering who all those people were. Stephanie V asked who was the guy next to Sam in the Dragon Pit supposed to be. We were trying to figure that out, but we had no idea. No idea who that guy was. Some sort of Lord of the Reach, lower Lord of the Reach, I guess. It's not clear. Like if Bronn was already Lord at that point, maybe he should have been there, but he wasn't there till this later scene. So I don't know. I don't know what they were doing there. I think they were just supposed to give us a sea of people we recognize with a few new faces in it to sort of represent, hey, these are lords who are weighing in here. I don't think there's a whole lot you can say about it. At least nothing interesting. But Alice Karstark was there, which is funny because we were like, oh, she must be dead because she was next to Theon in the Godswood during the battle, and then she wasn't. So we assumed she died. But then we found out she wasn't dead, and here she is again, popping up, sitting at the council, saying nothing. And so that's odd. Let's talk about. Well, actually, we're past the hour point. Let's do a quick mid-roll, and then we'll get back to several other topics. All right. Thank you to our Blood Rider patrons who would probably go a little farther in avenging our deaths than the Blood Riders on the show did for Dany. Vorsaki, wielder of a Valyrian steel Arak with a dragonbone hilt. Kohel Koei, called Sunpiercer, wielder of a dragonbone bow, and one of our Facebook mods. Thank you very much. And Kokava the Tamer, wielder of the Wildfire Whip, Gehenna. Wildfire Hip doesn't sound like a good idea.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll think that through a little more. And for our Queens of Love and Beauty, Erin, Lady of the Long Desert, names Emma of Starfall the Queen of Love and Beauty in sight of pods and men. And from the depths of Fleabottom, Lord Ken of House Hammer has declared for Queen Kari, Fire of the North, who recovered Darksister from beyond the wall. Right on. Well played there with that rescue of Darksister from beyond the wall. And I want to remind y'all that if you are feeling a bit deprived with the show over, well, there is no better time than to get the books and do a reread or a first read if you haven't read all of them, whether that is the main series or Fire and Blood or Princess and the Queen, The Rogue Prince, The World of Ice and Fire, The Knight of Seven Kingdoms. All of those top titles are available on Audible as well as through Amazon, and you can get them through historyofwesteros.com. Support the show by doing so. If you go with Audible, you can get 2 free downloads for just the cost of nothing, taking a trial subscription. If you like the trial, keep the subscription, and keep those downloads either way. You could use those 2 free downloads to get Fire and Blood, or our book, The Thrones Effect, that we did with other YouTubers, or any of the books that I just listed. So go for it, folks. Valar reread us, Valar re-listen us, whatever floats your boat. You have something to say here?
I just have a couple points that I want to hit up. I was waiting for the right moment of context. But.
Cool. I was gonna move on to Brienne, but if you had something you wanted to say before Brienne's kind of a standalone topic at this point. So, whatever order we want to do it.
One was sort of an overall commentary on how the show's been presented recently.
Sure.
And I've been kind of stewing on how long it's been this way. But for example, going back to the end of season 7, we got that extended I don't know if montage is quite the right word, but that extended series of sequences as Dany arrives in Dragonstone with all her armies, where there was no dialogue. I even kind of poked fun at it a little bit, the idea that they would go through all this and no one ever says anything, like about how long the walk is. We sent scouts ahead, my feet hurt, nothing, until finally at the end, Dany, when it gets to the painted table, is that what it's called? Dany says, like, shall we begin, or something like that. But there was probably 3 minutes or at least of no dialogue, just imagery. Started this episode off like that again. That whole sequence of Tyrion walking through and then closed the same way. And I started to think there's been a lot of series of imagery without any dialogue. And I don't necessarily want that to be a negative thing because it is part of filmmaking, right? You get imagery, you get to use music, you get to use editing to present stuff, but also wish there was a lot more dialogue. And, maybe there wasn't because they weren't able to write Tyrion as well. So two-sided coin.
Our sellsword captain Haema Helminth wondered if maybe the Tyrion's walk was at all a parallel to Cersei's walk of shame, kind of in an inverse way, that he's not being punished, but he is feeling super guilty for his role in all that, and it's he feels ashamed.
He's being put on display, presented for ridicule,
and he intentionally walked alone. That's a big part of it. That I think kind of makes the connection a little tighter. Is that he's like, no, they're like, it's dangerous, and he's like, I'm going alone, and partly because he's so racked with guilt that whatever happens to him, he might feel like he deserves it.
It's a little more clear later when he talks about Varys' ashes can tell my ashes.
Yeah.
He told you so, You might imagine that's more that is going through his head.
Yeah.
If he had been there, he might have imagined someone walking behind him with the bell.
Yeah.
Yelling shame.
Cersei, of course, doesn't feel like she deserved any of that, whereas Tyrion is like, he may as well be like self-flagellating there as he's walking through the streets. But yeah, that's a decent parallel there. Let's talk about Brienne for a minute. That's she got new armor. That's cool. It's a detail that people could miss. It's the same style as the old school Kingsguard armor from the original season and following seasons, but this has a raven carved into it.
I like that.
Instead of the stag, I presume it was. Yeah. And the book, the white book, of course, we'll have more to say about this in the book to show because the deep white book cuts are very those are deep cuts, period. There's some, we would take a close look at some of those pages, but this was a good scene. Gwendolyn Christie got to do some more solo acting, which is always tough, but a lot of these actors in the show do a great job with it. And boy, her handwriting is good. I was like amazed, like, damn, that is some good handwriting. And of course, it's so meme worthy. The memes of her writing what Jaime, like he kept hitting me he kept spanking me with his golden hand. It was weird. So many just jokes about that and related topics.
Yeah, I remember when we were watching the episode, someone was like, best dick I ever got. Only dick I ever got.
Really knew how to wield a sword. Yeah. So yeah, the jokes just write themselves there. And why wouldn't they? So, do you have anything to say about that moment? Were you surprised to see Brienne become Lord Commander of the Queensguard?
A little bit, just because I thought she would stick with Sansa, but also I don't think it's problematic. I think it's fine for her to have fulfilled her obligations and for
the Stark daughters are safe.
Sansa wanted to choose a Northerner to protect her, and have it, and it kind of gives a representative. It gives the Starks some say, gives some agency to the North by having there on the King's Council.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
And maybe her defense of Arya and Sansa could extend to Bran. So I think it's fine. I think it's good.
Why don't we talk about Sansa for a second then? She, like I said at the beginning...
Because the second's not long enough, that's why.
You're right, we're talking about Sansa longer than that. She has this awesome dress, the weirwood leaves, super cool, really loved it. There was a brief moment of like, she getting married here? Where we're like, I don't know, like, to who? Like, that would be random. On the other hand, that Robert Aaron, a lot of people pointing out that he looked a lot more handsome. And like, that would have been, she's like, actually, now I'll marry you. But no, he's probably still kind of a putz, the character. Not the actor. He seems like a fine, put-together gentleman, young man. But so that was nice. And I kind of laughed that Sansa was saying, of course, I don't mean this is a real criticism, but it's funny that she's saying, and the North will never kneel again. And as she's just being crowned, everyone's kneeling.
Kneeling down to her.
What she meant was they won't kneel to anyone outside of the North.
She'll never kneel again. Yeah.
And so that was cool. Like big, like unmitigated win for Sansa and the Starks there in that.
And again, another, I'm going to say, like...
I'm saying, and just a minute ago, I said it's not a win to take the throne.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think it is because
But a win for her people.
Yes, that's
right.
What I mean,
Maybe
yes.
not for her, but a win for her family, a win for her people. And also, I'm going to give credit to her making this move to get this win. Even if it was maybe slightly unrealistic presentation, we should have had more of this play out. It would have been neat to see what's going on in Sansa's mind leading up to this, wondering if she would get away with this, deciding to do it at this key moment, what seed she had to lay with other people to get it to be agreed to. There's so much more. I wish we could have seen how this is developed, but she made that decision at that council to make a stand for the North, and I want to give her credit for that, you know?
Yeah.
And I also want to point out, the last word spoken on the Game of Thrones series were the Queen in the North. The Queen in the North.
Yeah, that's true. And the last dialogue was, "I once brought a jackal, honeycomb into a brothel, but we still didn't get the answer to the punchline to that joke. Damn it!" All right, so some more questions here. Actually, I skipped one point here I wanted to get to. Arya going west. That was definitely foreshadowed. We caught that. It's somewhat foreshadowed in the books in different ways. We'll get into more of that on Wednesday. A lot of Bravos feels there, though, is very related. And it's cool to see her, getting that all together. And as part of the montage, it was nice, although it is a very dangerous quest. So that part of it's kind of scary for her. Yeah. But it was nice to see that. And from a book reader's perspective, it tied together the foreshadowing that we thought we were seeing. So that was nice. From Stefan, how can all the other kingdoms be okay with the North getting independence? Surely at least the Greyjoys and Dorne object. Okay, I don't disagree, but we don't have to assume that their place to object would be at this great council. Yara objecting, that... Okay, that I can kind of agree with. Maybe she just didn't want to go against everybody. She could see that she's the only one here that's against this new thing. So she may as well go along with it. And then later she can do whatever she wants. It's like words are wind.
Yeah. And again, it is another thing to think about. So many details of this was rushed, but just it's one reason ballots are secret. If you're going to vote and let's say there's 10 people going to vote and 3 people dissent and you get I, nay, I. What are those last 3 people are gonna have a hard time? Okay, I just will go with the flow here.
Yeah. And we just don't know these characters either. Like this new Prince of Dorne, for all we know, he's a coward.
Yeah.
For all we know, it's the opposite. He's really ambitious.
Or a sycophant. He might have been picked by Grey Worm. You know,
his goals could mean getting closer to the throne, which would mean independence. It's not there's a lot of possibilities that don't involve claiming independence at the Great Council.
There also might be some more... There's something to be said for independence, but there's also something to be said for unity.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. It's not necessarily what they want. Yeah.
Right. So I can see how those other nations, based on the wine trade Dorne had, let's stay and not have new tariffs imposed, or
yeah, good point.
So many
Whereas
things.
The Iron Islands are well, if we break free, we can start raiding.
Yeah. But we might also bring the wrath of the other nations against us.
Absolutely.
So maybe we should start raiding. That was part of my promise to Dany.
But they're also, that's a good point. But also they're culturally apart. The Ironborn are culturally separate from a lot of the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, and Dorne is too. Yeah. But you could say, but that doesn't mean. But
as is the North.
As is the North. Yes, that's why these are the examples being listed, I think, and that's a good framing of the question by Stefan here, as he's pointing to the regions that are the most culturally separate. But as we've said, it can be a waiting game. We don't know these characters,
right? You can see reasons all around why it might have happened this way, and we wish they got explained better. You can also see reasons all around why it might fall apart in the coming months or years.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrion even said that. He's check back if it was in 10 years. I don't know if this was the right call. They still. Even though we're looking at it as okay, elective monarchy is better than hereditary monarchy. It's a long way from democracy, but it's a step. But even they weren't sure because it's untread ground. It was one of the things that Dany said that kind of scared Jon because of the context she said it. It's true. It's not scary in this context, which is it's hard to imagine a thing that's never been, right? And they're trying to imagine this new system. And it's hard to imagine it because, it's such a complicated, big, far-reaching thing, and they don't know how it's going to work. And you're not going to know how it's going to work even after just a few months or even just a year.
Even democratic states, the history of democracies, it didn't start off with everyone gets to vote. It still was like the elite, like senators, the wealthy, landowners,
men.
Even in America, which maybe ostensibly a model for democracy. Still had slavery like for 100 freaking years.
Yeah, women couldn't vote till like what 19.
And when we got rid of slavery, like now everything. No, we still had institutionalized racism. We still had institutionalized sexism, even under democracy. And even when the democracy got more expansive, we still had all these social issues. It wasn't like it just suddenly fixed everything. So we gotta believe that they're not gonna suddenly set up the exact correct government, and even if they did, they're still going to be flawed, whatever we even think the exact correct government is.
And that's part of the way they sold it to the audience, is Dany saying, oh, I'll just topple these governments and take out these tyrants and then set up good. It's like, no, you can't just do that. It doesn't work that way. You can't it's never that easy.
Yeah.
And okay, more questions. Gabriela Sanchez, how can the South have something to say about the Wall and send their prisoners there, i.e. Jon, if it belongs to another kingdom, another state? Said into modern terms, it isn't logic. Get your own prisons, you lazy MFers.
Well, the Wall predates the Seven Kingdoms being together.
Yes. So this is an old tradition. It's book canon. Even when the kingdoms were separate, this is how they operated. They kind of agreed to send their prisoners north, and it's an interesting subtopic that the Wall started to decline when the unification came, because there were no longer as many infighting between the kingdoms, and thus, because whenever there was infighting between two kingdoms, the losing side, a lot of people would be sent to the Wall. But the King's Peace sort of wrecked recruitment for the Night's Watch in a lot of ways. There's still criminals going there, and that's what Jon sees when he goes there. He's told it's a mixture of criminals and lords and nobles and all that, but really it's just, for the most part, just the criminals.
It's a 9-to-1 ratio, not a 5-to-5 ratio.
Right, and it's because this is part of why there's no longer as many prisoners of war being sent. Like, the exception is someone like Alliser Thorne, who's super bitter about it all. That's part of why he hates Jon, is that Jon's father was on the winning side of that war that got Alliser Thorne sent to the Wall in the first place. So, so it is a little odd, in a vacuum, to wonder how they could all agree to this. But it's been in place for a long time. Like Nymeria, when she conquered Dorne, sent 6 kings to the Wall in golden fetters, and that's the most epic the Wall's ever gotten as far as prisoners arriving. But that just goes to show, even these kings were sent there. Like, normally you can't send a king out into the world to give them a chance to like work their magic and get followers again and come back and try to take their seat back. You usually got to make sure they're dead or gone, but
the Wall counted.
The Wall counted. Yeah. People trusted it. I guess it was an agreed upon thing that people honored often enough. So it does seem a little odd, but it's been in place for a long time. People agreed to it, and I guess that's that. But I do think they should get their own prisons, those lazy MFers. Gabrielle is right about that. Meredith Glassberg says, an observation about Sansa's costumes. The one she started off the episode with felt like a nod to the Night's Watch, and the last one she was crowned in is a nod to the old gods. Yeah, I guess that's true. It was black and very severe and powerful, but it wasn't necessarily northern in that sense. It was more, I don't know if it was any region. You could say Night's Watch because it was all black. It could have looked Targaryen if Dany wore it. Like, it put a little red on it.
A little tangent here, but something else about this that lingers in my mind is that we kind of get distracted by these epic events, the Drogon burning the throne, the idea that Jon killed Dany, this time jump and this decision about democracy. But man, tens of thousands of people were still just killed, both at King's Landing and in the North. People should be wearing black. They should still be in mourning. These are trying times. Mm-hmm. Think how many people are going through PTSD right now. Think of the loss that has been suffered. There's probably still people starving, orphans. It's we're kind of getting the hope for these named characters and these lords, but the average people are suffering still.
Yeah. From Rebecca Santa, like me, do you want to hear the true opinions of the actors about the show's ending? Now that it's over, do you think they'll start spilling their guts? I kind of doubt they will. They'll say more than they did, but I kind of doubt we'll ever get like the true dirt. It's just kind of like, that's the kind of thing that if an actor really spills the dirt on a director or producer, it makes it harder for them to get hired by another director.
Their agent will be putting out fires. Yeah, they won't get as high a salary next time if they even get this certain job they wanted.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they still have to play politics even after it's over. So it's still going to have to be reading between the lines and reading their faces and things like that if we really want to know. From Vinicius Silva, hello from Brazil. Well, hello from Roswell, Georgia. Right back to you, Vinicius Silva. From Jorge OS. Would having the FAegon character introduced in season 5 make the show end journey cleaner, or was it smart to simplify the many plot threads? That's a tough question. I think it would have made some things work better, but other things would have just really been confusing to a lot of the show watchers. Like, where is this guy coming from? They would have had to set it up a lot more. It is pretty well set up in the books, even if it's some people were taken surprised by it. But then when you look back, the foreshadowing was there for it. A lot of it is.
If they were going to have another season or 10 episodes these last two, then maybe. But they can't start introducing new storylines. They're clearly paring things down ever since the Sept, you know?
Yeah, but I do think I would have, like you said, I would have liked it. But yeah, no, I think given that they had to cut stuff, I don't hate that they cut that. But I'm glad that the way the show played out, it proved to a lot of people that it was an important plotline. A lot of people thought it was cut because it was unimportant, but I think that theory is now quite dead, because I think it shows all the problems they had folding that plot in, and the way it can impact Daenerys' arc, as in, you know, maybe she's blamed for destroying King's Landing. Maybe it's young Griff / FAegon at King's Landing in this spot instead of Cersei. And there's a lot of ways for the, you know, King's Landing to turn against her. And of course, there's a lot of evidence that Tyrion could be the one to really push her to level a King's Landing in the books, which would change a whole lot of people's perspective. So anyway, that's all for another day, because these are topics that are pretty off this original question here. But it's worth exploring. Something we're going to be getting into quite a lot is after the season here, now that it's over, is looking at some of these plot lines and seeing what they've told us, and seeing how important they are. Because now that we can see the whole thing, we can see what we were missing by not having them. And that's something we didn't have a full picture of before.
Did I see a note in there earlier, Shea, that Rita of the Copper Mane and her parents are watching this right now? Yeah. Just want to give a shout out to them.
Right on. Hey, Rita and folks. Also from Thomas Pappas, to the best in the biz. Thank you, Tommy. We appreciate it. From Blue Duck Umber. Please tell me I'm wrong. Was Kit Harington wearing a wig after he was imprisoned? You guys are amazing for what you do. Just so you know, 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marine, Scout, Sniper Platoon are all huge fans of you guys. Hooah! Well, thank you very much. Yeah, hooah. Thank you very much, guys. That's awesome to hear. We appreciate that. And I honestly do not have an answer for you here. I don't know if he was wearing a wig. His hair was longer.
Yeah, you should know. That's in the books. It's tradition. When they put someone in prison in King's Landing, they put a wig on them.
How did I forget? How did I forget?
I wouldn't be surprised, though, because it might have been that it was just his hair, but a little disheveled. But they were trying to show time passed. That the beards were longer. Both Peter and Kit's beards were a little longer. I wondered on Peter Dinklage if that was not a real beard. I think that they put prosthetic beard, I don't know if that's a word, over his real beard to make it look longer and fuller. Because I kind of know how beards work as far as coming in your cheeks and stuff like that. You have a little
experience with that, huh?
Yeah. It's not just how long it gets or where it grows in. Who knows how he grooms it? It's another thing I like to nitpick a lot, even more so in Westerns, because I can imagine these lords and ladies probably do some grooming before they head out for the day. But in cowboy movies, I know the types of things you have to do to trim your beard and mustache. They would be a mess. And everyone always has these perfect little handlebar mustaches in the movies. And
it's true.
Beards not realistic when you're out there in the countryside and wilderness without a mirror or running water.
That's something Hollywood does all the time, making people handsomer, prettier, better teeth, better beards, better hair.
To be fair, part of the reason for it's similar to wearing, not wearing helmets. It's the image is part of the recognition of the character, and it's also when you might have to film on different days at different times at different people, you need the costume and makeup. They just have to make it be the same every time.
Yeah.
So even if they want to make it look a little more natural or scruffy, how do you get it to that same natural scruffy state when you have to film a different scene from a different angle 2 weeks later? They just have to make it be recreatable.
Okay, right on. Also want to give a shout out to our new sponsor we have, and they have this really excellent pitch here that's worded in a way that you all will appreciate. Sleep 6 mattresses are mattresses so comfortable that had Brienne owned one, Jaime would have never left Winterfell. See? It's a good start to this ad, isn't it? Did you know you spend 1/3 of your life in bed? It's time you started doing it right. Sleep 6 offers a 100 nights watch, just night risk-free. 100 night risk-free trial, not Night's Watch. No Night's Watch will come join your bed while you're sleeping, unless you want them to. Free expedited delivery, a 10-year warranty, and every bed comes with the guarantee that you will dream of spring. Enter the code GOT and get $200 off any site. That's Sleep 6 mattresses, sleep cool and supported. A lot more. Go to sleep6.com and again, enter that code GOT, $200 off any size mattress. That is a good deal. Okay. From Scott Burleson, R plus L equals J was meaningless. How did it matter in the end? I definitely can't agree that it was meaningless. It didn't amount to as much as maybe people thought it would, but keep in mind, it drove a lot of Ned's story from the very beginning. It affected his relationship with his family. It affects his relationship with the king. It affected a lot. The trickle-down effects of R plus L equals J are apparent from the first chapter. What do they mean to you, Sean, as someone who hasn't read the books fully? There, of course, a lot of the R plus L equals J equals stuff is there in the first book. That's the majority of the evidence is there.
There is
still
a bit of, in the first season of the show, they hint at it a few times, although
right.
it kind of
It's
dries up for a while.
Subtle. Yeah.
But, and that's one of my thoughts is it'll probably matter more in the books. It's going to play out differently. A lot of this stuff will have different meanings and implications. But another thing I think that the show is doing, for better or worse, is that they're making homage to the books. They're getting stuff on screen for the fans. If you flash forward 10 years, a lot of the stuff they did in the books in the show will be different. It'll happen in a different order, or there'll be different motivations. Cause and effect will be switched around. But we will still, I think, we'll be thankful for some of the imagery that we've gotten, right?
Yeah.
Even if it has a different meaning in the books, there'll still be these moments, these structures, these characters, that we'll have imagery for. Along the same line, there will be some of these thoughts and images. I can just imagine D&D wanted to get this mystery out there, right? Even if they don't sum it up correctly. I knew something you asked me early on when I first started watching the show. You asked me, and I was constantly picking your brain. And you and other people around me who were lovers of the books were careful to tell me about the history of things. You guys could tell me all about Robert's Rebellion without telling me that Ned was going to get killed, right? And I would pick your brains. I'd want to know more about the context and the history. And at one point you asked me a question. You said, does it make sense for Ned to have a bastard? That really kind of stirred me up and made me look for it, And I can imagine D&D also have this, and other people involved with the creation of the show. They're familiar with this mystery. They're familiar with these clues, and they wanted to tease us with it, whether us is the book readers or people new to the show, maybe curious what they would get. And they have to be careful not to slam it in our faces too hard in the beginning. But they needed to drop the hints at it, and especially when they're tying up at the end and not sure how George is going to tie it together. The mystery's still there. They want to address it. They want to bring it, even if they don't find the right way for it to matter in the end.
Yeah.
I still think it's good for them to bring it to the forefront because it is going to matter in the end.
Yeah,
right?
And there's other ways it mattered as well in terms of the way it divided them. It caused conflict between them, and it was a part of the engine for Bran to maybe do some manipulating to have the end game come out the way it did.
It's one of the things I still spin in my mind, kind of going through different if-then scenarios. Why was it Bran? How much difference did it make? Because part of me feels like it made things worse for Bran to reveal this. Mm-hmm. But maybe it had to get worse before it gets better. Maybe certain things were inevitable anyway.
And of course, in the books, there's other factors too, like the ability to ride a dragon. They just kind of hand wave that here. They didn't bother to make that a thing. I don't mind that too much. I wish they had, but it's not high on the list of complaints of things that got cut. But that's obviously really big in the books. That your blood. It's not entirely clear how much it matters, but it matters. It's not necessarily the be-all, end-all, but it's important. All right, next question from Tracy Metherell. The animals are very important to this saga. I broke down when Drogon was mourning his mommy, and she shed tears of joy when Ghost finally got his pets. Yes, that was awesome. I loved seeing that. It was very sad, but yeah.
It's weird for me, actually, honestly, because Daenerys and Drogon just killed so many people.
Yeah, but you're still so sad.
And yet, during the scene with Drogon, coming up to Daenerys, right now I'm starting to cry. Just thinking about it, it just gets me going so much. Despite knowing logically, these two are killers.
It's something that we all can kind of understand, on a very meta, not meta even, just a very basic primal level, like you love your mother, and everyone gets that concept, even if they didn't necessarily have a great relationship with their mother. That concept is out there everywhere, that it's important, that relationship is important, and it's defining, and it's true for animals. And so it's this thing that we have in common with the animal kingdom, even big killer reptiles, that we can all sympathize with that. That's tough. It's pretty well done in that sense. And they did it too with the Jorah thing. Like, it wasn't even the first time. They're like, hey, that worked. Let's get him with that again. Drogon can emote way more than y'all thought he could. From C. Klabina, wish we had more Arya Yara dialogue. Yeah, they have the same 4 letters in their name. They really could. That's what they really... Talk about my brother one more time, and I'm going to steal your letters.
It's definitely an example of being rushed, not having as much dialogue.
They could have been. They could have had a lot to say to each other there. Could have been a nice subplot there. The whole.
I forgot another big thing that I wanted to bring up. It's something that our friend Rudy brought up. That Dany didn't really betray any of her Westeros allies, and pretty much all of her Westeros allies betrayed her.
Yeah, isn't that weird? In a sense, it's funny.
I wish I brought that up in context of other stuff earlier, but I definitely wanted to bring that up. I think it's very interesting.
You can argue she betrayed the peasants of Westeros.
Yeah,
I would argue that for sure.
Like you could argue that she betrayed Tyrion. Tyrion made her promise.
Maybe
like,
they
hey,
betrayed each other.
When they ring the bells, they've surrendered. Please don't kill the common folk.
But she never promised.
Right. She didn't exactly promise. She indicated. She nodded.
It wasn't a promise. It was,
but like Jon didn't promise that he wouldn't tell Sansa.
He flat out didn't agree at all.
Right. Yeah. Dany didn't press him to promise, and he definitely didn't promise. But she still felt betrayed by it. So and maybe she was. But then Jon also stabbed her in the freaking heart, man. So like.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the story, right? Like when we get the fuller version of the story, the slow burn of everyone betraying her, everyone turning on her, is if that's what happens, and I can see that playing out, that will be a lot more compelling.
Also, however much she betrayed Tyrion betrayed her first. Tyrion let Jaime go. Yeah, right. Tyrion let Jaime go. So
you're right. That's true.
And now, there was
betrayal on both sides.
Just because Tyrion let Jaime go doesn't mean it's okay for Dany to burn a bunch of innocent people.
Right. Yeah,
but it's not that simple either. There's more to it.
One doesn't excuse the other. You're totally right. Yeah. Marley, love and appreciate all the wonderful content and the kitties. Well, thank you very much, Marley. The kitties have been very well behaved today. Looks like they're all sleeping. Sometimes they're romping during the streams, and we try to grab them. But today, nothing but peace. For now. That never lasts. Okay, so so we mentioned that there was no Arya bow. I wanted to maybe mention a couple things we were wrong about. I was pretty sure about that, but boy, nope, that went nowhere. We were hoping for the Reeds. We weren't exactly predicting that. We were hoping that. We mentioned that earlier to cover that. Didn't happen. Oh well. We were maybe hoping there was an impact of Varys' letters. That seemed like it would matter, but it didn't even a little, which I'm a little disappointed at that because it didn't come up at the council. Now, it makes sense because they skipped time, that the people who were in her favor, they weren't like super gung-ho Dany. They hadn't had time to like meet her and decide she was the right queen. They just got these letters and were like, oh, Jon's the real heir? And the next thing they know, Jon isn't an option anymore because of the compromise and him killing Dany. So I don't know what those lords would do in that spot. Like, oh, Dany? Oh, Jon? Oh, neither? All right, well, what do I do? I go and vote in this great council?
I mean, I'm telling you, I want that last episode to be a whole season. I'm telling you, I want to see each lord receive the letter, confer with their own advisors, write letters back, and etc.
Okay.
Oh, I would love that. So many people would hate it so much.
It might be boring TV to a lot of people, I guess, but hopefully it'll at least be in the books, right?
No, realistically, with how they've been going, I don't know that I would have been riveted by this. But if that was the case,
I'd give them a shot.
Ryan Cogman writing the whole season.
Oh yeah, give me that.
Imagine if there were like a series of these council meetings with all these lords from the lands,
Yeah. So a couple of minor small plot points here that are fun or interesting. Sam presenting a Song of Ice and Fire to Tyrion was very cool. I like that. The art was familiar to the actual art used in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I loved that they referred to Sam helping with the title because that guy Ebros was really bad with titles. You know, it was like, I love that scene. It was like, the title's really boring, man. That was really good.
Obviously, Ebros was, Jim Broadbent, who we met in previous seasons. If that name didn't ring a bell, just for everyone.
And I half expected to see him in this episode, not half, but thought there was a chance because they talk about characters that we hadn't seen in a while coming back, and I guess it was just Edmure.
It's another thing that a lot of people speculate on, the idea of Sam as the one that wrote a Song of Ice and Fire, and closing moments, just like Tolkien, he's closing the book up, and I like that idea, but realistically, Sam doesn't know enough of the story. Not enough time has passed for him to write this together, with the right perspective. Maybe he could.
Well, and that's why Tyrion's not in it, right? That's what they're showing us. He didn't. This dude who wrote it also didn't nearly
know everything about it, right?
Like, what the heck? Like, that's. I thought that was a cool meta statement on.
I mean, you saw the size of that book, and you see how big their font.
It does seem like Tyrion should have mentioned some.
Well, maybe he should have been mentioned once, but you think about how many books there are in A Song of Ice and Fire, the series that didn't make Tyrion mentioned. Yeah. And then think about that's just one book, as if it was all condensed to one book.
Well, and then here's the other thing, right? This leads into a more important mention of stories, which is Tyrion's pitch to everybody about how stories matter. That was a really meta moment where he's talking how stories matter. It's like, yeah, that's why we're all here. It was a pretty cool thing to say at the end of this long run of this great show. Is that how much stories move us? Because it's true. We're all thinking, yep, well, look at my life the last several years. This story certainly did move us. Damn right it did. It's pretty hard to deny that, even if you hated Season 8, if you hated Season 8 and hated Season 7, if you're still watching, it had a big impact on you. It at least ate up a bunch of your time.
I think I've said before, this is our mythology. This is our generation's mythology. Maybe even our era's mythology, maybe Star Wars, I don't know. But it will be talked about 100 years. It's part of culture. People who never seen or read any of this are still going to know Mother of Dragons. I'm sure there are people out there who haven't seen Star Wars, but they still know what a lightsaber is, etc.
So I really liked Tyrion's speech there, even though I don't think it was enough to sell these people on Bran as king. I think that was obviously rushed. But if it had been spaced out, that would have been a good part of the convincing argument.
Yes,
like if they're distilling the argument down into one scene, does a pretty good job of distilling it.
Especially if you can imagine what might have happened is it might have sparked a series discussions or nominations or defenses where Sansa could have said, hey, I got a pretty freaking good story too. Yeah. All right.
Arya's like, hello, my story. It isn't about ruling. It's not why I'm fit to be a good leader, but it's a damn good story.
And you do need maybe a combination of someone who has a good story and would be a good leader, which maybe wouldn't be Arya, but still might be Sansa.
And that's why some people were like, John's story is really amazing too. He came back to life. But again, there's more to it. He doesn't want it. And there's the whole compromise.
Other people definitely don't want it.
Yeah. So yes, he's a good choice in that sense that he has a good story, but for the other reasons, not so much. What else do we have here? So that was maybe the most important speech of the episode in terms of like carrying things forward. In terms of the climax, Jon and Dany stuff seems to be more important. But in terms of the aftermath, that was like the seminal speech of what everything is, like what this is all about. And it kind of makes sense to give that to Peter Dinklage. Even though it's a little awkward to have the prisoner speak to everyone like that. It's after Grey Worm is like, no, you can't talk. But, Tyrion's... But frankly, like, if we're complaining about Tyrion being really convincing too quickly, I am much more convinced by this scene than I was by him talking his way out of the Mountain Clan's clutches in season 2. To me, that's far more out there. Like, they would just kill him. They wouldn't even pause to let him talk, But hey, Tyrion's character is good at talking his way out of things. It's always been a thing. It's always been established. So it makes sense that he would be the convincing guy at the end, It fits in that sense, at least. All right. Let's see. Do we have any more questions? We're getting close to wrapping it up here. As Ashea said, we have a lot of other things to talk about on Book to Show Day. The possibility that Bran will be king in the books. The way Dany's armies might play out, whether Drogon will melt the throne, how much this Nissa story could work, a lot of other stuff like that. Yara, Queen Sansa, Alyssa, and Arya. A lot of things that we might got to think about and consider whether they'll actually happen in the books or how they might happen differently in the books. All right. So, like I said, last chance to get those questions in. Here's one from Cara Bouchard. Do you think there was something sinister to Bran's ascension to the throne? I know he said he didn't want it, yet he knew he was supposed to have it. His dragon comment and what he told Jon came off eerie. Yeah, if he knows that people will see his I don't want it as a positive, then he could just say that more to win them over. You know, it's definitely possible. What do you think?
I suppose it's possible, but still doesn't necessarily mean it's sinister. And I also think, much like I think of all the other visions and prophecies, is it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear. I think even to Bran, I think his visions of the future are minimal and clouded at best, assuming that the idea of like being able to affect the future once you know it's trying to change it.
It's like we said, indexing, like the world. It's like he has the World Wide Web, but he has to know what address to type in. Like he said, like maybe I can find drogon. He clearly couldn't just do it. Yeah. Right. He had to put some kind of effort.
He at I'm going to say what seems to be like a greater state of experience with this at this point, right? Was so uncertain if he could even find drogon. So the idea that he knew he would be king all along, I don't think so. Yeah. He might have had a vision of some of these moments, but not really understood how to get there or what they meant even. Just like Melisandre had visions of battles at Winterfell. You know, it's like, so it must Stannis must be king. Well, she was the vision was true, but her interpretation was wrong. Might be part of why Bran held back on commenting or judgment, because he wasn't quite sure what was going on. He might have been making a mistake when he was like, okay, Sam, go tell Jon right now. He's got to know. Like, and Bran might have been screwing up.
Yeah.
And just like Melisandre screwed up.
It can be manipulative without being sinister.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Like it might be like a Bran knows best kind of thing. He thinks he knows best. And maybe he does. He does have omniscience of some sort. Not full omniscience, but he does know more than everybody.
If you tell your kid that they're not going to get dessert unless they clean up their room, you're being manipulative. But that's a good manipulation, I think, you know.
So a couple of images we didn't get to put up. We talked about a couple things that Shay is always wearing so many hats. She doesn't always hear what we're saying because there's so much going on in the chat. So a couple of things that we talked about but didn't throw the images up for. The wearwood dress from Sansa. We talked about how awesome it looked, but we didn't get to put it up on screen. Really, really amazing. Kind of the peak of their amazing costume work, which we have that to look forward to.
Imagine how pissed those costume designers like Michelle Clapton was. She's like, this is the piece de resistance. This is the best I've made. It's gorgeous.
This is the highlight of my
It's here. It's on
creative
screen
career.
For 30 seconds tops, probably more like 20.
Yeah, barely.
I bet Sophie Turner's like, I'm taking this home. They let me take the wolf home. I can take this. I can take this dress home.
Yeah.
Arya's like, I'm taking this dagger. John's like, I'm taking the wall. Tormund's like, I'm taking Gwendolyn Christie. And and Tyrion's like, I'm taking a bath. Yeah. Another, what you had something to say?
Well, yeah, they just did the image of Drogon burning the throne with Jon kind of turning his head, which I thought was a good moment in a lot of ways, but it particularly reminds me of being right about no one sitting on the throne at the
end. Yeah, no one did. She did not sit on it. She never placed her butt on that seat, not even for a second. She was distracted by Jon coming in, and that was that.
You know, that was another thought that we talked about for a brief moment, the idea that how much ruling she really did versus conquering. You know?
Yeah, there was some ruling in Meereen, and in the books, it's a little more like that was rushed through. Right? Yeah. It does happen in the books more, but she
does feel the need to do it. She does want to be good at it, but she still does not do nearly as much ruling as conquering.
And she also isn't great at it in the book. She needs advice, and that makes sense. Like, why would she be great at it? She's like 14 or 15. And
Robert was great at it. Why can't she? Ares was great at it. Why can't?
So yeah, but she definitely wants to be good at it, which is different than Ares and Robert, who did not really care about it. They just didn't put that kind of effort into it.
And even other characters who maybe wanted to be good at it still weren't necessarily good at it. You know, like maybe it's a little different being Han, but Ned was not good at being Han. You know, like
something I want to get a real close look at is those maps Arya was looking at, but
I have them, but they're not relevant to this episode. It's stuff we want to talk about on Wednesday.
Yeah,
and
people honestly, in general will be looking at these for a while.
Honestly, the map shots we got, I'll just give you a little primer on it. What we see is maybe some like mistakes, honestly, on the maps, as far as I can tell, and it's hard to get a non-blurry shot. Yada yada yada.
They also spelled Barristan's name wrong in the White Book.
They did.
They also had Robert Baratheon's name is Robert Barra.
They just shortened it. Yeah.
They reference Arthur Dane's father, Beric Dane. We don't know his father's name, so could be Beric Dane.
Could be Beric Dane.
It could be. Seems interesting for a Stormlander name to be a Dane name, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially a Marcher Lord.
Yeah,
name.
exactly. That's why I'm like, I don't think it's
against the Dornish.
I don't think it's Beric Dane, but maybe.
We have seen crossover names like that before, but yeah, it may not. Yeah, it bears a second look for sure. So another cool, very easy to miss moment when Jon is leading what appears to be a large group of wildlings with Tormund north beyond the wall to reclaim their homes, I suppose, or maybe more ideally, it would make maybe more sense for them to go south and settle in the Gift, but clearly that's not what they said they were doing. And there was a quick moment there as they're walking where you see like a little greenery, like a stalk coming out, like a blade of grass or something. It's just cuts away from really quick,
it's a dream of spring.
It's a dream of spring, exactly.
It might also add to why they're going back north to start a new settlement because it's more settleable now.
Yeah. It's a hint at what we can't prove, what they can't prove, what they can't even know is happening, but what might be happening, which is the seasons might be going back to normal. We are told by George that the seasons will be explained in the books, and so they wouldn't have known that the seasons are normal yet by now.
They still might know. We don't know for sure how far along that image is.
Yeah,
and even if it's only months ahead, I doubt that moment
there.
Right, they're going out with a bunch of kids. That's probably not the first ranging that they've made, right? They've probably had other people ranging out there for a while and have seen fruits, flowers, blossoming, whatever. Like, okay, maybe we can start a new settlement. Get the kids together. Let's go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jon will be in charge.
Mm-hmm. So, I think that's about. Oh, I guess a couple more questions have rolled in. Let's take care of those. A couple
more questions. Were you guys saying you think Jon's just setting them out to settle?
That's my thought.
I tend to think that as well, but I will say it is a hotly contested subject. A lot of people think he's down at the wall and he's gonna go live beyond the wall. I don't think so. I don't think that's the case, but it is a thing people are talking about.
Oh, so you think maybe he was leaving to go live with them?
He's gonna go live with. That's what some people think. I don't think that myself exactly. Kind of. He was in his Night's Watch clothes. Not that he has other clothes, but like symbolically, I don't know. I just figured it's worth mentioning that it isn't as cut and dry as you guys are thinking.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with that theory. I do side with he's sticking to his oath. I don't know why he would have the ability to leave the Night's Watch. So
it might not just matter. It just might not matter at all at that point. They're like, you don't need to stay in the Night's Watch. Grey Worm and the Unsullied have left.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of not mattering, what they did with Sam here, it's like, wait, is he married? Wait, he can't be married because he's an Archmaester. Wait, he's the Lord of the Wait.
Yeah.
What is Sam?
What are the rules?
What are the rules? We do not know. When you're Sam, you can do whatever you want. That's apparently the rules. That's the rule for Sam. From Priscilla N, no question, just sending love. Well, thank you for that, Priscilla, Lady Pris, Lady Purple Kitty. Nataquilina Monteverde, that is a cool name. Tolkien's Norse inspiration versus Martin's. Yeah, well, Martin's got a lot of Norse inspiration in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's a topic that several people have covered in depth, specifically looking at Jaime as a tear for losing his hand, and for obviously anyone losing an eye is a reference to Odin. Both Bloodraven and Beric and some other characters have that going on with them.
You think Sandor gave Gregor some knowledge?
Yeah, he gave him some knowledge of that knife. Close and personal look at it. He gave himself some knowledge, which is, damn, you can survive that too? Jeez, man. So, but I'm not as versed in Tolkien's Norse inspiration, but it's there because there's really no such thing as a fantasy author not at least a little bit affected by Norse mythology, because it permeates our culture in a lot of different ways.
Even if you don't realize it or try, you're going to do it.
Exactly. Now, it's definitely possible. Obviously, there's cultures that, there's authors that don't come from that background, and, they would have come from a different background entirely, maybe weren't super exposed to Norse stuff. But it's very ubiquitous. Certainly at Tolkien, it's, he's a European guy. It's definitely in his background. Matthew Petty, would you all consider reviewing, discussing the Lord of the Rings series coming on Amazon? Jon and Tormund go north looking for new ladies to love. Clearly, those are separate statements because Jon and Tormund, I don't expect to appear in the new Lord of the Rings series coming on Amazon.
Not with that attitude.
Yes, we would consider it, but I kind of doubt we'll be able to do both because there's definitely people out there that know Lord of the Rings better than us. And if there's a prequel show and books, I don't think we'll have time to give Lord of the Rings the coverage it deserves. I don't think I have time to cover 2 series like that.
You know, we know pretty well, though. We know Atlanta pretty
if
well.
we're covering
That's a little easier to cover.
If we're covering anything, we're covering The Expanse. Okay.
Yeah, if we're covering another book series, The Expanse is more like
another book series that also has a TV show adaptation and both to cover.
Yeah,
realistically, especially because we've already covered season 2 of that, but
you never know. Like maybe the prequel show won't suck and won't get picked up, or will tank after one season, and we'll be like, well, maybe we should try a different fandom. No, that's not likely, but it is possible.
Sean wants to cover Watchmen.
Yeah, I'm trying to actually keep my hopes down for the Watchmen because I expect it to be. So I hope for it to be so good.
Yeah, I'm also keeping my expectations down because I always do that.
I will say, for better or worse, that show might stir controversy. A lot of the topics and characters and of that story. You know,
it looks bold.
Yeah, we generally speaking try to be fair and positive, I'll say. And I can imagine that show. Imagine covering that show if a fandom surrounds it. There will be a lot of divisive points there.
Yeah.
You know?
From Bryce Acri, I'm continuing to enjoy the great episodes. Merci à vous trois. That's, I believe that's thanks to us three, the three of us. Well, you're welcome. We appreciate you saying so. We appreciate the super chat. We appreciate the engagement. It is part of what makes this fandom great. We get to discuss these things together. We get to figure it out together. We get to experience it together. And even though the show is over, we have plenty more to come, and we hope you stick with us and the fandom in general because it's going to be fun, these things that we have coming. So I think that does it for today. Any more comments, Sean? It's your maybe last chance to say something for a little bit before we get you back on a live stream again in not too distant future, but it'll be at least a few weeks.
I just need a whole nother stream.
Well, we'll have to come back with the stream that was promised for Sean. Without actually promising when that will be, but it will be soon. It will be soon. You can bet on that much.
Are you gonna dance today, Sean?
I'm willing to.
We should have a dance for this last one.
For this last one.
It's the last Game of Thrones episode show only review.
But do you know what you want to dance to, Sean?
Well, when I had on the John Travolta Snow Sunday Night Fever Staying Alive shirt last time, I thought that would be a good song to play. Maybe it could still be.
Okay,
that's a good.
Maybe the drum and bass mix of Jenny's song might be a good one too. Though I don't know how easily you could get that up or how good the sound will be.
I don't have it. I haven't heard it. I haven't seen it.
Bee Gees might be better. It's more recognizable.
Everybody knows that song.
Yeah.
And John is pretty good at staying alive, or at least coming back alive.
Someone said bittersweet dance.
Bittersweet dance. Yeah, we'll just have to do we'll do some email. I'll do some shoegazing.
Okay, I'm looking this up for you, Sean, as I assume you need it any second now.
Are you looking up Staying Alive?
Staying Alive.
I'm kind of already getting into it here.
Yeah, I see people talking about The Expanse in the chat here while we're waiting for the music situation to work itself out. Yes, there are 8 books of 9 out in the Expanse series, and they've been coming out on schedule. Very few delays, and so the 9th book will complete the series, and that's pretty cool to have a finished series to talk about. And Shay and I really love it. Book 8 is her favorite. Book 7 is my favorite. Book 3 was my previous favorite. Book 4 was her previous favorite. So, you know, really, really, I see a lot of other people backing me up on this. The Expanse books are great. Yeah, people are talking about the novellas. Yeah, and if I've said it before, but I'll mention it again. The guys who write The Expanse, one of them used to be George R. R. Martin's assistant, and both of them, I believe, played in the original setting, which was a role-playing game. The Expanse was a role-playing game setting that got turned into a series of novels and a TV show on first Sci-Fi and now Amazon. And looks like we got the cat of black and white ready for this shot as well. Heck yeah. It's almost happening, folks. Shay's grabbing the camera. Bye.
Play the music. Hopefully people will tell me how much they can hear.
I wish I had the image of him walking down the street back
Oh.
He was like...
People, let me know if you can hear the music.
People are also asking me about the new CK2 version. I have not played the new modified version, but I will be getting back to streaming on Twitch with it. Here we go. Sean be dancing. Get it. As usual, I read the chats while Sean is dancing. We have a love you, Sean. We have a we can hear it. We have dancing emojis. We have that is a big room. We have Sean staying alive. We have Kitty. We have LOL. We have...
More important to see the cat.
Yeah. Burning alive. This is a joke. Yeah. Best water answer I've seen. What was Sean drinking? I must have missed it. He was drinking green naked juice. He talks about it at the beginning.
Green naked juice and like coconut pineapple sparkling ice.
Yeah, something gross like that. Set that floor on fire, says Steph P. He'll dance to some Ramstein, says Matt Sanders. Fire emoji. That man moves like a god, says Facundo Clemente. Haha, burning alive. Can Sean take off his pants, says King Aegon the Aegon the Fourth. Yeah, I think we need a big super chat to get him to do that. Of course, it was King Aegon the Unworthy who asked that question. We have a great dancing, great season comment from Jack Hyams. We have thank you for the amazing live stream. We have I'll miss Dancing Sean. Well, Dancing Sean will be back. Pants off, dance off. Where are the kitties? Well, there's one kitty in there. There's the black cat of black and white. The rest are not perturbed by the music at all. It's funny how cats can be disturbed by like the sound.
Be impressed.
Yeah, he would.
That was a good haul.
You can pop up just a slight. You can like peel back like 1 inch of a cat food can, and every cat in the house will wake up. But right now, they just aren't responding to staying alive. Someone says green naked juice is the best. Black Mirror Game of Thrones crossover. Better than season 8. From Lady Marmalade says, go Sean, go, go, go. Scott, Sean, Dancing Sean YouTube channel. We need a cat cam that just picks up on Sean dancing randomly. Love Sean's dancing, even if the cats don't seem to care.
It's not looking at all.
White Boy Seawalk. Sean, you should audition for the Saturday Night Fever remake. Arya went west to pick up her very own Irish wristwatch. Sean needs a dancing channel.
Okay, are we good?
I think that's it.
I'm still loath to put the whole song ever.
He's really giving it. Yeah, cats have 9 lives, so whatevs.
Sorry, everyone. I'm paranoid about us getting copyright infringement for some reason. For using a whole song.
Okay, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for attending. Thanks for liking and sharing and subscribing. Sean's a little winded.
Someone asked, who's the dude in the blue shirt? We always have a live audience. Now, today, we have a live audience. Our friend, Rudy.
That's right. Our friend Rudy, who we've known a long time. We have referred to Rudy before in this show, but I don't remember what we said.
Even this episode, he's the one that brought up Danny being betrayed and not betraying.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, then now y'all know. You'll know a little more about us. So until next time, thank you very much. Thanks to Shea. Thanks to Michael Klarfeld for the maps and the music. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of our patrons. Thanks to all of our Facebook mods and everyone who has made our Game of Thrones coverage possible and excellent and fun. And, well...
And boo to everyone who spoiled me.
Yeah.
Every one of you who spoiled me, I give you a big hearty thumbs down. And that's it.
Yes.
I still hope you have success in life.
Thank you to Ashaya. Seriously, that's a tough job she has monitoring the chat because she has been... Not only did she face trolls, but she faces spoilers. So it was very... Very, very courageous of her to put herself in front of all that so that we could talk about it unspoiled. So double thank you for that. Triple thank you for that. Something that you guys aren't even aware of, but just one of the many hats she wears back here making this work. So
she's like Mira dragging Bran on a sled.
Yeah, and then not getting thanked for it afterwards. Yeah, just Bran's like, all right, thanks, bro. Like, I'm not even a bro. What are you talking about? Okay. So thanks, everybody. And Valar rewatch us, Valar reread us. See you soon, folks.